your host, sabrinasalvati. I'm your host, sabrinasalvati.
All right. Welcome to Sabby Sabs podcast. I'm your host, Sabrina Salvati. My special guest tonight is Niko House. He's the host of For the People podcast. You may remember him during other election cycles. Welcome back, Niko.
Hey, Sabs, great to be back. Thanks for having me.
Hey, what is going on, man? Because I know for those who are not aware, like Niko and I were just talking about this because you have already had experience covering news during an election cycle. This is my first time covering news during an election cycle, and it's crazy, like chaotic now because like I was just on vacation, and I feel like everything happened while I was gone. The Hulk Hogan thing at the RNC convention, JD Vance, which we'll get into in a little bit, but I feel like everything was breaking just one after another. Bam, 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 bam. How did you deal with all that in the past?
It didn't. I mean, I dealt with it. I don't know if you would call it like in a healthy way. Like I was keeping up with the news cycle. I was only getting about 4 or 5 hours of sleep. For those of you who remember back in the day, I would start streaming at times at 7 a.m., do a 2-hour stream in the morning, cover breaking news during the day. I would release clips during the day, and then do maybe another hour at night. I couldn't do that anymore. I had to stop because it was wearing me down. But the election cycle last time was chaotic in and of itself because we had the rigging, which was obvious. There were so many candidates, and this you got to remember. You actually, I don't know if you want to call it fortunate or unfortunate because you're a journalist, but you didn't have to go through the primary. Remember, there was a whole primary in 2020 on both sides of the fence, really, and so we had to deal with that for a year before we even got to this point. So yeah, I didn't deal with it that well. I burned out. I'll tell you, that's what really happened is I burned out by the end of it all. So I learned my lesson, and now I deal with it in parts, and I handle what I can, and I trust that my colleagues can handle the rest when I don't get to.
All right. And that brings me to, for those who don't know, who may be newer, we started, like those of us at RBN, we started in 2021. So it was after the election season. It was after, Trump lost. So we missed all of that. I mean, we were watching independent media, but we didn't cover any of that. So we started during a time when there really just wasn't a lot of movement in the political space. Now, we still had news to cover because crazy things happened during Biden's administration. But now it's just like go, 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 go. Like it's crazy right now. Yeah. And then I never thought I'd have to deal with the presidential candidate choosing not to run for re-election. So there's that too. It's crazy.
So the funny thing is, y'all started exactly whenever people need to be paying attention the most. That's what makes what you guys did so great, is because there were a lot of people. This is one of those the few times that I was actually kind of like disengaged because I was dealing with family stuff. And so, but a lot of people just don't really want to cover Biden. And I knew that was going to happen. They didn't want to cover Biden because you had people that were considering themselves, quote unquote, Biden bros, inventing reasons as to why it's okay to try and support him or at least not criticize him overtly and focus even at that point still on Trump rather than uncovering the neoconservative policies of Biden. And now you saw people flip during the Gaza situation, and now you're seeing them flip back, to get behind Kamala because of that time of year again. But because y'all were there from the beginning, a lot of your audience, they're already privy to the cycle because y'all were there since everybody stopped paying attention. But the people who knew, like, this is when we're supposed to start paying attention because they're going to start passing stuff that we're not paying attention to. And y'all were covering it. That's why, RBN gets a lot of love now.
Yeah, I was going to tell people like for those that started, I would say, well, actually, some people started during Bernie 2016, but for those who started like during the 2020 election, if you started during that time, like you had it from both sides, right? Because Trump was always trending. He gave a lot of ratings to corporate media. I think that's why they were kind of like, oh, Trump's gone. And now all of a sudden our ratings are going down. He gave them a lot of ratings. And then at the same time, you had another Bernie campaign, which there was a lot of momentum around that. And then all the many candidates that ran in that primary. So if you started during that time, I think that was a good time for people to start. And I think with us, because we started after that, it was just kind of like, people are like, okay, Biden won. I'm done. I don't want to pay attention to electoral politics right now. I don't want to do this now.
But that's how you build up the right audience, though. You build up a good audience. Yeah, you're right. The other way, doing it the other way, yeah, it might bring you more people quicker. But the problem is you're building off of a brand, on somebody else's brand. Y'all built off of RBN. They built up off of Bernie or being a Democrat or being a faux aggressive or a latte liberal. But y'all actually built up off of, no, we're going to cover what we're going to cover, and this is our stance, and this is where we're going to stand on our business, and that's not going to change. Because we didn't get famous from covering Bernie, nor did we get famous from Trump derangement syndrome. You just got popular telling it like it is. And so that audience is, stuck around. And now more people are getting to hear you because the election has changed, but y'all stances have only really evolved and improved more than anything, which we can't say for a lot of our colleagues at this moment. So
that is true. Well, that brings us to JD Vance, because this is something that I missed when I was on vacation. He was announced as Donald Trump's VP pick. This guy, I want to start with the kids and the taxes clips. I got a couple of clips I want to show, and I want to get your take on this, Niko, because he is saying just the craziest shit. So this is JD Vance on Charlie Kirk's show, and I want you guys to hear what he says about people that don't have kids. Listen to this.
Well, I'll go back to something I said earlier about we need to reward the things that we think are good and punish the things that we think are bad. So you talk about tax policy. Let's tax the things that are bad and not tax the things that are good. If you're making $100,000, $400,000 a year, and you've got 3 kids, you should pay a different, lower tax rate than if you're making the same amount of money and you don't have any kids. It's that simple.
So, Niko,
your taxes are already different if you have 3 kids with that amount of money. So I don't know if he knows that. I'm sure he does.
He's basically saying that people that don't have kids should have to pay more taxes. And I'm like, so we have to be punished because
that's ridiculous. That's a ridiculous thing. And what's even crazier is because, so let's just say you don't make $400,000. Just say you make $80,000. Right? Because for some reason he's focused on $400,000, which is that's an insane number. Most Americans are like, what? Why are we even talking about that? It has nothing to do with me. But those Midwestern people who are making $60,000, $70,000, $80,000, who are making just enough that the government takes taxes from them during the year and during tax season, we're going to punish them because they decided to have a nuclear family. I thought that the whole reason, because they decided not to have a traditional nuclear family, I thought that we wanted to reduce the amount of pressure we're putting on the government. I thought that's what, we want small government. That's what I thought, if you're a conservative. But if you're telling me I'm going to have more kids, having more kids means I can be protected by the government. I can get taxed. I can, get more tax credits or evade taxes that I would otherwise pay. You're going to encourage people to enter situations that it's putting more pressure on single people and people who decide not to have kids for what? Just because they chose a different lifestyle? That's ludicrous.
Yeah, that's insane. Oh yeah, Niko, can you turn up your volume by chance?
Yeah, I can definitely do that. Hold on.
Someone said it in the chat. I didn't know if it was.
How can you hear me now? Is it better?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, I just don't think it's fair to punish people because they don't have kids. And then also too, it's this guy, to me, it almost feels like he's saying things like this on purpose. And I have a couple other clips to show too. But it does just seem really weird. I also have heard from some conservatives that are Trump supporters that they're not happy about this pick.
A lot of conservatives are not happy about this pick. And it seems like he's out to intentionally sabotage Trump. People don't really think that Trump wouldn't fall. Yeah, he would. He literally would. I mean, Trump does not, the thing that has made Trump popular is also his biggest fault. He doesn't understand politics, nor does he understand the game. Like, he doesn't understand the gamesmanship of politics. So there is a good possibility that this guy was selected for Trump because he was not even in the top 5 of his VP candidates. And so whenever JD Vance, a person who was literally a never Trump guy, was announced, everybody was extremely confused.
Yeah. And speaking of him not being a Trump guy, I do have that clip as well. This is when JD Vance was on CNN. Yes, he was on CNN before. I think you guys need to hear this because not only does he speak out against Trump, but he speaks in support of voting third party. This is some wild stuff. This is August 29th, 2016. And they played this clip from the Matt Jones podcast. Listen to this.
I cannot stand Trump because I think he's a fraud. Well, I think he's a total fraud that is exploiting these people, who is a total fraud.
That I agree with you on Trump because I don't think that he's the person. I don't think he actually cares about folks.
But I think that I'm going to vote for third party because I can't stomach Trump. I think that he's noxious and is leading the white working class to a very dark place.
Also, that was super weird that he just went straight to the white working class.
Yeah, just the white working class. But also too, like, so that's him agreeing with Matt Jones that he feels like Donald Trump is a fraud. There's been other video clips too where he was not a fan of Trump apparently. And then also that, but he said he was thinking about voting third party. It does not make any sense that he would pick this guy.
He comes off like a chameleon. That it's ironic that he's calling Trump a fraud because he comes off like a chameleon because there are people who have tried to put JD Vance in this populist category. And I'm not seeing it. I don't understand where they're getting this idea that everything that he said has either been hyper conservative or just hyper conservative. Even where I thought that he might have been decent at, right, which was the situation in Ukraine. I just watched a speech with him where he refers to Putin as a dictator, and this is just a false on his face. He has a legislature. He has, matter of fact, a lot of people in Russia argue that Putin can't do as much as he would like to do because he actually has a bureaucracy that he has to go through in order to get things done. Unlike the rest of the West, who just kind of does what their elites tell them to do, what their corporations tell them to do. So even the things that I thought that he'd be decent at, he's not really showing that he's even better than Trump on those issues because a VP is supposed to improve in areas that your president may lack in. He's not bringing anybody into that base. I feel like he could be scaring voters away. How do you even open up a tax conversation if you're making like $400,000? Who the hell in Ohio or Indiana or Illinois? Maybe Chicago, but like the majority of the states that he's supposed to help Trump win, who's relating to that? Why is that even a conversation? And millennials, which Trump needs, Trump was winning with millennials. Now we know millennials, there's very few of us that can afford to have kids, right? That's just the reality of the situation. And there's very few Gen Z who are looking forward to have kids because they're looking at our situation like, damn, they got messed up and they got somewhat of a head start. We're really screwed. How is that winning the young voter?
That's a good point. People are saying your mic is still low. Eric said maybe get closer to the mic.
Oh, that's weird. I thought I was talking kind of loud, but all right. Let me check.
I mean, it sounds fine to me, but
it could be YouTube itself. It happens sometimes. Yeah, my mic volume is all the way up. It's even my system is showing that it's high.
Yeah, it sounds fine to me. I think it's just you got a Shure mic like me.
Yeah.
I mean, it sounds fine to me. What's Eric saying in the private? Eric said it's low. Oh, let me see. StreamYard has a check for this. Hold on. Eric, isn't there the possibility to do the volume thing for the?
How does it sound now, Eric? I put on stereo audio to see if that helps. Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, it sounded fine to me, but I'm sorry.
Yeah, everybody's saying different things. Some people saying it's low. Some people saying it's good. So it might be StreamYard. It just really might be. Your mic is burdened by what's been. Oh man, yeah, we all about to be burdened by what has been. If JD Vance will get up out of here, you know that Chuck Schumer So there have been rumors that Chuck Schumer, there have been rumors that Trump is thinking about replacing Vance, or at least unhappy with Vance. And Chuck Schumer came out and said that he has about 10 days officially to replace him. I don't think that'll happen. And Trump campaign has come out and fervently denied that. But I believe, due to the lack of appearances that I've seen with them together, that it is highly plausible that Trump is trying to disassociate from him. Because he isn't being asked about anything that JD Vance is saying.
No, that makes sense from what I've seen, because I also have this one from Simon Ataba. I don't know if you follow him on Twitter, Niko, but he's a trip. But he had this clip.
I do follow him, actually. He
follows him. Is he funny?
Yeah.
He posted this clip. It says JD Vance's roommate during their time at Yale Law School. So I want you guys to hear a little bit of this. This was his roommate.
Another
at Yale.
one?
Yes.
Oh, man. Okay. Yeah, I gotta hear
Look,
this.
they went all the way back to they're finding multiple roommates that he has had, I guess, because they're basically just trying to prove. Yeah. They're trying to prove they're like, this guy there's something up with him. Listen to this, guys.
Go. Now, you put out this text message he sent, where he calls Trump America's Hitler, something that I think there are people out there who relate to. But I guess the question I have is, do you think he still believes that and he's just okay with it now? Or what's your assessment?
What it seems like is that, unlike a lot of Republican politicians who I think you could characterize as just empty suits, who will say whatever they need to be powerful, JD has allowed some deeper anger to motivate him here. That was something that I could sense a little bit when I knew him as a roommate. I mean, obviously, he was skeptical of the law school environment. He's written about that, but he had a very caustic sense of humor behind closed doors about some of the students and events at Yale. And that's one of the reasons we didn't get along so well, because I didn't want to make my identity, this kind of defined in opposition to the law school environment. I mean, I ran the comedy show there. I was having a pretty good time. And so what it seems like is that JD has convinced himself that this caricature of his political opponents, whether it's the left or the media, what have you, is so evil in his mind that it justifies a turn to Trump or to getting rid of some of the principles he used to have so that he can beat his opponent. I mean, you routinely have heard him over the last few years say things like, we need to destroy our opposition. I mean, at the RNC, he gave an interview where he said we need to punish Joe Biden and Kamala Harris by electing Donald Trump. So these are not aspirational statements, right? These are the statements of a guy whose anger and contempt, I think, are motivating him to be involved in politics.
So apparently
that doesn't even make any sense, Sabs, considering the other interview we heard, right?
Right. And then, but apparently he referred to Donald Trump as Hitler. So again, it goes back to what you were saying, like, did Donald Trump select him, or did someone else select JD Vance for him?
Oh, but it's not just that he called Donald Trump Hitler. People have to understand. So I don't know if you have the interview, but his old friend of 10 years that he also went to law school with is a transsexual. I think she converted to so it's a he now or a woman. I can't remember which one she converted into, but basically they were best friends. He talks about her, he writes about her, and he actually refers to her as a lesbian in the book and in the documentary, and reaches out to her and apologizes in case she was offended if he had accidentally misgendered her. In other words, this person, JD of the past, was considered to be very empathetic. He was sympathetic to the Black Lives Matter cause. He was sympathetic to Mike Brown's situation. He actually said he hated the cops. He said he hated the cops for how they treat him, and that he can't imagine what Black Americans are going through every single day. This man was, at the time, would have probably been considered an independent populist, maybe a little bit conservative leaning, which is almost like the opposite of what this guy knows him to be, which is like, oh, he used to make fun of leftists. So like, and we make fun of liberals all the time. So that's what would make me think that maybe he just has a problem with liberals, right? But the fact that he seems to be all things to all people at the time where it's most convenient, even with his little weird, like, kind of white guy, like white working class shtick, like while he's married to an Indian woman, a gorgeous wife, he has a gorgeous wife, but like, even to that shtick, he's like, not really. Like, bro, you actually do like brown people and you do like leftists. I don't know why you're pretending that you don't. Because it seems like he is concerned with one thing and one thing only. Well, no, two things. It looks like he has a weird need for validation, right? and he's concerned with being as successful as humanly possible, which obviously ties back into the first thing, which is a need for validation.
Yeah, and I started watching the movies on Netflix, by the way, for people who don't know. Hillbilly Elegy, that's his documentary or his biopic. That's his biopic. I haven't finished it, but I started watching it, and so I had to stop because I had to go do something else. But I already see the theme that's being presented, which is I grew up poor and I pulled myself up out by the bootstraps, and you can do it too. And don't get me wrong, like what is shown in the movie, it seems like most of his life took place in Ohio. So I know he keeps telling people he's from Appalachia. According to the movie, it seems like he grew up in Ohio, not really in Kentucky. Right. So there's stipulations about that too. Like people are kind of confused about that as well. But obviously, from what I'm seeing in the movie, he did not have an easy life growing up. Like just going by the movie, there were obviously issues with his mom and all that kind of stuff. But what is being presented is, look at me, I grew up poor, but I pulled myself up by the bootstraps and I made it all the way to Yale Law School and I worked my ass off and da-da-da-da. But the point I think that a lot of us are making is that no one in this country should have to do that. No one should have to work multiple jobs and all that kind of stuff. Like no one in this country should live in poverty at all. And I think it's weird to me that he had that movie out and it was directed by Ron Howard, believe it or not.
What? Isn't Ron Howard a liberal? That's weird. But you know the part that always, so in these stories, there's a key factor that always eventually gets left out. And when I see stories like, so he's 39. He's already, had a venture capitalist firm that was backed by Peter Thiel. So he's like, a 39-year-old venture capitalist that's managed to go to law school, start a successful business, and become a U.S. senator and run for vice president. You know what that tells me every time, Sabrina? And you probably know this too. What does that usually tell you? Where did you start out when you turned 18?
Me?
Just in general, if a person has all that achieved by 39, if they manage to have the security, the network, the experience to arrive at this level by 39, generally, where did you start out? The military. They always leave that part out. They left the part where they got to save a lot of money. Their college was paid for. They had no debt going in or coming out of the military, coming out of law school, coming out of college, especially if he was able to retire medically with 100%, which as a Marine who deployed on multiple tours, he probably did. And so if you got 100% medical disability, not only do you have the GI Bill, but they pay for your law school. I know because they were going to pay for my law school. I got a full ride to law school, but they were going to just give me money, like to go. I was going to finish with extra money, basically. And that extra money, you can, and if you are a military vet, you also have the benefit of what? The VA business loan. That's a guarantee, as long as you have the initial seeding money. Yep. And you also have the ability to what? To have a VA home loan. So you have locked in interest to buy your home. I mean, the head start you get from being willing to go and shoot and kill brown people is insane in the US. So there's not as much as a pull yourself up by your bootstrap situation. It's more so who you're willing to kill and how much of your integrity you're willing to sacrifice to get to this point. And I'm a military vet, so I know these things. And I'm a paralegal, and my brother is a career counselor in the military, right? So like, you hear these stories and you hear certain patterns and you're like, how old are you? 39. Oh yeah, you're in the military, weren't you? Yep, every time. It checks every single time.
Yeah, and my dad was military too, so I definitely understand. Like, yeah, same thing with Tim Walz, Governor Tim Walz, which I'll get to him in another story later on tonight. But same thing, he was also, military and that kind of thing. And yeah, so for me, it's just like, and then there's one more. There's this one I want to play is what? Wait, what? From Hotspot. This one just doesn't make any sense. But shout out to Hotspot for getting all these, because Hotspot has been killing it. Listen to this.
Hey guys, JD Vance here in Radford, Virginia. I thought I'd take you behind the scenes a little bit. When you get to an event, they've got a ton of crap for you to drink and eat. You got 3 bottles of Diet Mountain Dew, about a dozen Snickers, a bag of chips. If I ate even half this stuff, of course, I'd balloon up like crazy. This is the energy that powers the presidential and vice presidential campaign. Of course, I'm honored to be supporting President Trump. I'm honored to be his running mate. If you want to help us, chip in $5, chip in $15 to get the message out and to get people to the polls. This election is so important. Your resources help us do the things we need to win it.
So,
yeah, this food is bad for us, man. I would blow up if I ate this food. Also, could you just chip in $5, please? Jesus Christ. Is this how we TikTok, guys? I heard this is how we TikTok.
it's just weird. And then I also want to ask you about the Peter Thiel thing before I get to the Amanda Seals statement. The Peter Thiel thing. Because I know, like, people told me when I was out, people were like, Niko did like a hell of a coverage about JD Vance, about the Peter Thiel connection and all that kind of stuff. One of the things that we've pushed for multiple times, I think those of us that are anti-duopoly, is that we're trying to get people to see that both Trump and, well, it was Biden, but now Kamala, both of them are, they're corrupt. Both of them have like a certain level of corruption. And as much as Trump said that he wanted to get rid of the deep state, he essentially put the deep state in his campaign.
Yeah, some of the worst people that he could possibly, like in his administration the first time. Yeah, that was like, John Bolton this guy literally bragged. He's like, that January 6th wasn't a coup. What we tried to do in Venezuela, that was a coup. I tell you, that was a coup. Weren't successful. Or what they did to Biden, I guess, would be also a good example. But in all seriousness, the thing is, they're probably referring to my coverage not only of just Thiel and Vance, but BlackRock and this venture capitalism thing in general. So I have this theory that right now there is an ongoing war amongst the elite. There is the old guard, which is the Vanguard, BlackRock, the real estate and commodities class, right? Versus the digital revolution class, which would be the Elon Musks, right? The Peter Thiels, etc. Trump, people have to remember, technically speaking, the real estate and commodities class, they are his competition, technically speaking. So he has less power over them. He does have some kind of power, but really the deep state runs that more than anybody else, right? Right. So when we look at the war with Russia and Ukraine, they're going to get whatever result they want to in that situation, or at least they have been able to, and they've been prepping for it since 2014 because that's how much control the deep state has over that. Trump has had extreme influence over the digital side, right? Even if we look at what's going on right now with Elon Musk in Venezuela, all of a sudden X is the #1 app in all of Venezuela, right? Top 3 in the world right now, but #1 in Venezuela. And all he is doing is posting fake news about what's happening there and pushing propaganda, right? Now, this is obviously a stance that Trump has taken in the past. And Elon basically just says whatever Trump says and defends Trump no matter what. And ignores Trump when he's wrong. Now, if we saw Zuckerberg doing this openly for the Democrats, we would rightfully complain about it because we're like, what the hell? It's supposed to be a public space. Also, there's almost like a fiduciary duty to kind of stay out of the situation because what it looks like when you are censoring certain people, right? But you're simultaneously elevating certain people on a platform that is considered a business to a lot of people. And the people that you are censoring they have their own businesses, and the people that you're elevating also have their own businesses. Now, all of a sudden, you are pushing people to speak in a certain way, to elevate certain people and to elevate a certain message, in this particular case, Donald Trump. And it looks like that's on purpose. It looks like it's all on purpose. So with JD Vance, the connection is he's Peter Thiel's prodigy, effectively. He didn't like Trump. Peter Thiel actually didn't like Trump. I can say for a fact that I know Don Jr. was working on bringing Peter Thiel into the fold since maybe a year or so after the 2020 election. I know for a fact. I actually had a friend who met with both of them because he's a lawyer. And basically Donald Trump Jr. was trying to convince Peter Thiel that Trump isn't the enemy, it's actually the other team. And then what we've seen recently with Rumble and everything like that, because, YouTube and Alphabet kind of lean more neoliberal, Democratic side, Rumble has gone in the opposite direction. And Peter Thiel was effectively a liberal for a long time. So it kind of switched. So now Peter Thiel all of a sudden has his prodigy come into the Trump camp, and JD Vance organizes a meeting between Trump and Peter Thiel. And although Peter Thiel has pledged to not give any money to any PACs this year, what's become obvious is that he still has influence on Trump's administration at bare minimum, and that he's even probably had some influence on Trump as of late, especially because it seems like the Rumble, which is YouTube's main competition, which we would consider favors liberals. Then you have Twitter, which is Facebook and Meta's main competition, which we would consider probably to align with Trump. And then you have Trump's Truth Social, which is obviously his. All those major platforms and all those owners are on whose team? Isn't that a little bit weird? I guess a little bit weird or coincidental. And so it looks like Thiel is having, not only Thiel, but even Elon is having influence over Trump's administration. And this might be good in a situation for like perhaps Russia, because Thiel's not going to want that war to continue at the end of the day, because he's digital. I need Russia. I need that market. I can't have y'all sanctioning the shit out of everybody I don't like. I need China. I need Russia. I need Iran. I can't have y'all sanctioning and limiting my access there. And one thing that Trump is going to do is he's going to open up them floodgates for every multinational corporation if he can. And I think that is what the purpose of JD Vance being a part of that organization. And I don't even know if this administration, and I'm not even sure if JD Vance is as much of a war hawk as he's pretending to be. But he knows his neocons needs to get as many of the Nikki Haley voters as he can. So he's all of a sudden started parroting her.
So that's why you think that he's making the comment, or the video is circulating around that he made the comment that we need to basically go to war with Iran?
Yeah. I mean, he's all of a sudden saying we need to go to war with Iran when he's actually been I would say at the bare minimum, an isolationist since he's been a senator. And now all of a sudden we have to go to war with Iran. He supported what happened with Soleimani. He's echoing basically the same justifications that Trump echoed whenever he did, or he says that he assassinated Soleimani on purpose, but I still maintain he had no idea. Motherfucker woke up that morning and found out like we did. And then he had to go and because if you look at anybody watches those press conferences with Trump after the assassination of Soleimani, he just is blabbering like, yo, I'm just saying, reading some talking points. Yeah, he was a terrorist. And then like, how did you not know that he was known for killing terrorists? That's just a weird thing to miss. And then like whenever they retaliated and said that we didn't, they threatened us. They retaliated and said, if y'all retaliate again, it's y'all ass. And Trump was like, all right, we'll call the truce then. And that was it. But I mean, that's what happened. And it's weird that everybody keeps forgetting how that shit played out. But like, even Trump knew we can't fuck with Iran. But he knows that's what neocons want to hear. That's what neocons want to hear. That's what neocons want. They want war with Iran, or at the bare minimum, they want control over that oil supply. They want that government in our control. And so JD Vance is just saying whatever he has to be the neocon, at least the open neocon that Trump is most times in the shadows, or that he allows his administration to be, even if he won't be openly neocon when it comes to certain things like starting new wars.
Do you think he's going to hurt him in this election, though? I was just looking at recent polls. Kamala Harris is caught up with Donald Trump now. Yeah,
Kamala is caught up with Trump, and I don't know if we can trust the polls, obviously. I do think that JD Vance could hurt Trump in basically just because he can't help him. Trump needed a counterbalance, and JD Vance is not it. He would have been better with Vivek. Vivek is a better liar than Trump is. Than JD Vance is, excuse me. And he's also a better liar than Trump is. To be honest, Vivek can sell the shit out of Trump's policies.
People told him not to pick Vivek or Nikki Haley because they said it'll turn off a significant portion of the Trump base because it'll look like he's trying to be too woke. That's serious.
Wow. That's crazy.
That's what
it's wild. Serious. So they say, hey, don't pick the Indians. Just pick the guy with the Indian wife. So they know you're not racist, and it has nothing to do with that, or at least so we can pretend like it has nothing to do with that. It don't look like he made the decision. What's crazy is it genuinely to me looks like he just was not really all that tapped in to the decision-making process of his administration. I think that it maybe was a compromise with the RNC, because this time around, it does look different. The Republicans have actually coalesced around Trump. And even the Mitch McConnells of the world, who are like avidly against Trump. Mitt Romney is shut up. We haven't heard anything from him, right? All those Republicans who are out against Trump openly have been quiet. So even Lindsey Graham. Lindsey Graham was always like a little really weird wishy-washy on Trump. And now he's completely in the Trump camp. So what it looks like is that this might have been a compromised VP.
That's a good point. Well, speaking of VP, that brings me to Kamala Harris. Amanda Seales has released a statement to Kamala Harris, and this is a complete contrast to what she said in 2020 with the Biden-Harris ticket. In 2020, Amanda Seales said that she was tired of people asking what was their platform, and she said, I don't care what their platform is. I just don't want Donald Trump again, right? Well, now she is saying something different, and this is going around on Twitter, ladies and gentlemen. Shout out to What's the Business for sharing this. Amanda Seales calls out Kamala Harris, part 2. For those who don't know, Amanda Seales, she was an actress. She's having a difficult time getting jobs in Hollywood now. She's also pro-Palestine. Listen to this.
Putting clips of Kamala Harris stating things. I don't need politicians to state things. I need politicians to do things. When I met with Kamala Harris after she summoned me, I said to her straight up, you talk out two sides of your neck and we don't know what you're talking about.
That's for damn sure.
I wouldn't be surprised if it's Kamala Harris who's trying to shut me the fuck up. Because I told her straight up that I feel like she is disingenuous in her messaging. And she said to me, well, you're being too critical. And I said, I am a voter. I'm supposed to be critical. That's my job. And I want to see actions. She said, well, how am I supposed to talk about racism in America without calling Americans racist? I said, well, first of all, there are many racist Americans, but there's also policy, legislation, institution, and systems that are racist that need to be addressed. They need to be addressed. And if you're not going to do that in an actualized way and in a loud, bold way, people will never really know where you're coming from. Well, you can't tell me how I feel. So I'm not telling you how you feel. I'm telling you how you sound. I'm telling you how you sound. Okay?
Hey, look, she ain't said nothing slick to a can of oil.
The truth is that you should always question your source and what are their intentions. And what you all need to know is that I don't need to do any of this. I don't need to talk about any of this.
So, Two Identity said she was telling us to shut up and vote. Yeah, she was. In 2020, she was one of the people. And now she's complaining that basically Kamala Harris doesn't have a platform. And she, I guess, felt like this administration, Kamala hasn't really done anything. But that's what we've been saying, Niko. Like me and Roland Martin got into it on Twitter. Because I said Kamala Harris doesn't have a platform on her website. And he was like,
oh, people don't know how to use Google. What is that? Why should I have to know how to use Google? Why is it not on her website? If it's her platform, it's almost like she doesn't want to be locked down in any policy. That's what it seems like to me.
So then you can't go point back to the website and say, well, you had it on your website.
Exactly. And what she's saying, what I love about what she's like, there are racist institutions, because you can talk about the institutions. You can talk about like the historical racism in redlining. It is a historical fact. But you can also explain how those same policies actually do hurt the white working class community and use that as a unifying point. Saying like, yeah, these policies, that there are racist policies and they are sold to you as being okay because you think it doesn't affect you in this particular way. but it actually does, and here's how. And if she was this policy wonk that everybody pegs her to be, she would actually be able to articulate this in a way that would unify, especially liberals, and at least make people believe that she's genuine. Because there are people who can disagree with you on certain policies that are race-based or race-specific, and they'll still vote for you if they believe that you're genuine. That happened with Bernie, right? We thought that there are people, there were conservatives back in the day. I mean, big Trump supporters who like, yeah, man, I don't really like a lot of what she says policy-wise, but man, I love me some Nina. They used to always say that to me. I was like, are you for real? Nina Turner? They're like, yeah, I love Nina, man. I love her. I don't always agree with her, but like, she's a genuine person. I really like her. And like, they just got upset whenever they like, you can't have all those, you have these stances and then tell people to go vote for Biden or support neoliberal policies or neoliberal candidates after, which is what they felt like she did. So like the biggest problem is like what Amanda said, like you're disingenuous. We have no idea where you stand. And then you acted like you cared about racism when you were running on your race. And then all of a sudden your race nor racism mattered. So it's like, is it a problem or isn't it? So, and you can make, and obviously you can make the argument that it is a problem, but that isn't, the problem is you made your entire campaign about your race. If you we didn't ask Obama to make his entire campaign about his race. We might have did it, because we was proud at the time. We got a little bit played, I didn't fall for it twice, thankfully, but I was 18 when I voted the first time, and technically speaking, I was in basic training. I didn't even get to really watch the election like that, so I couldn't even verify my sources. But he didn't run on being black. He ran almost in spite of being black, if you can make that argument. Kamala is running in an environment where she's like, oh, we can use my blackness, or my newly found blackness, rather, right? And so now, of course, the natural question would be, so like if you're running on being black, how are you gonna help black people? Well, we know what that answer is. If you're asking me if I want to do something to specifically help black people, no.
That's what she said. That's what she said. And then the people people are getting mad at us because we're saying, why, do you have a black agenda? Do you have an agenda for black people? And people are like, why is that important? I'm like, because that's what if you're running on, I'm a black female candidate, and you have no policy positions listed on your platform. Also, it doesn't even matter. Jill Stein has a black agenda.
Yeah. Question. Is it so unions that are in very specific situations, isn't it okay whenever unions have a union agenda, like they're demanding a union agenda? Teachers, isn't it okay when they have their own teaching agenda? Jewish people, they have, AIPAC has their lobby, but then there's also just separate Jewish agendas. Even indigenous people in their local elections, they have agendas that they want followed. Everybody has their own agenda that they demand of their candidates. Everybody does. Latinos, all of everybody. This is not new. So whenever people ask for a black agenda, it's perfectly justified because I'm a type of person, I generally try to vote for the best, candidate to represent everybody. But if I'm the average voter, I don't give a damn about everybody else. I'm going to vote for the three most important things for my family and myself, which is a logical thing to do. So if I'm black, where the hell is your black agenda at? You could tell me, I just didn't want to, I didn't really think it was that. Okay, that's fine. Well, you didn't want my vote. You didn't think my vote was that important either, huh? That's that. Because that's how every other classification and category would handle it.
That's right. Do you think she can beat Donald Trump, Niko?
Oh man. So here's the thing. With the help of the Democratic establishment, anyone is beatable because the general election isn't who's the best candidate, it's who can cheat the most effectively and sell it to the public. That's just the reality of it. One of the reasons that Jill Stein couldn't run for office in 2020 was because she had the audacity to challenge the 2016 election, even though Hillary Clinton herself was saying that it was rigged and that it was there was a bunch of problems, right? So she actually took people to court over it. And the Democratic Party punished her for it, which is even crazier. So she got tied up. But what ended up happening is in some of those lawsuits, she did expose some of the problems with the election system and some of the problems with the numbers that come out boom, now we fast forward to 2020. You got the situation where people always say Trump lost or Trump got cheated or Trump didn't get cheated. But the problem is we'll never know. Why? Because when he sued, it wasn't, people always say, well, if they would have said something, the judges would have known that. Why would they do that? Those are federal judges and those are private corporations who own the electronic machines. You have to sue to even audit. So you have to be able to prove that you'll be justified in auditing something that you haven't even seen because you don't have access. You get what I'm saying? So like, it's really a matter of who can sell the lie the best and who can cheat the most effectively without being challenged, like to a significant degree. And so from that perspective, Kamala always has a chance. The problem is, well, the problem would have been rather, Kamala would have had the debate. But now Trump is running from debates. So I don't know now. Because I thought, oh shit, if Kamala has to debate, there's no way she can win. And so, but Trump is backing out of the ABC debate because he believes that the Democratic Party is going to replace her, which they've said they're not now. Obama's behind her now. So that's out the question. And then Fox, I think that Kamala says she's not agreeing to Fox, or she hasn't come out and she hasn't said anything about it. So are we even going to get debates?
I don't know. It doesn't look good to run away. I'll tell you that much. Like, just go ahead and have the debate. But I don't think they're going to replace her. They would get a lot of like anger from people if they were to replace her now, especially with how she's increasing in the polls. I just hope a lot of the people that are uncommitted or undecided, I just hope in the end they come out and support third party or independent candidates. And I say that because when people say they're going to sit it out to send a message to the Democratic Party, that doesn't really send a message. The way you send a message is by voting for someone that's, either not a part of the, well, you'll send a message if you vote for the Republican Party too, to be real. But the way you send a message is by voting for someone else. That's how you send a message. Years later, they're still talking about, well, Jill Stein hurt Hillary Clinton in the 2016. They're still talking about that. So that's true. How you send a message.
Yeah, and because they're shaping their message partially based on that fact, right? Don't go and vote for a third party because you're going to just vote for because you're effectively voting for Donald Trump. So if it didn't have any effect on the outcome of the election, they wouldn't even worry about it. They wouldn't acknowledge you or acknowledge them. Trump has a problem though. Trump has an RFK problem. RFK is taking a lot of his damn votes. There was a few polls where RFK is polling between 7 and 9%. And almost all of those, I would say about a good 5 or 6% of them would probably go to Trump. And the rest would probably vote third party or just sit out. So he has a genuine RFK problem, which is why a lot of people were wanting him. They're like, well, y'all both Zionists anyway, so you might as well bring him on, right? And even though he's been keeping an open line with Trump, Trump has been keeping an open line with RFK, and he kind of seems like he's trying to throw him a line and bring him into the administration potentially. What it's looking like is that RFK is now so pissed at what the Democrats are trying to do by suing him in every damn state, or him having to sue them and spending all his campaign money just to make the ballots, that he's like determined to stay in now. And it's actually galvanizing a lot of his supporters. And those supporters because they wanted Trump to fight like that after 2020.
Yeah, because Donald Trump did call RFK Jr. asking him to basically if he would drop out and join along with him.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he did. So there's because he's taking so many of the people who just want something different than the Democrats, and that they're willing to believe it's an alternative, even if they aren't necessarily saying that, or even if they're not necessarily showing the ideological consistency to be considered an alternative. Like, in my opinion, RFK Jr. has moved to, people don't even realize he's not just wrong on Israel. He flipped. It's weird how he flipped. Different conversation for a different day. But beyond that, he's not good on China, right? He's decent on Russia now. But what it's showing me is that he is just shooting from the hip at this point. And that's not a good look. Basically, he's easily subjected to influence and not the right kinds of influence. Or he is scared for his life. In which case, it's probably justified, but also, why the fuck did you run then? You knew what your last name was when you decided to run. You knew what happened to your uncle. You knew what happened to your dad. You knew what you did during COVID. And I'm actually thankful for a lot of the work that he did during COVID. But you knew there's a lot of people were still pissed about that. So when you came to this race, you knew what your name was. So if that was what you were principally worried about, why did you even run? And I wouldn't fault you for not running. But now you're here. So at least stand on business. But he's not doing that. So, but he is taking a lot of Trump's votes. That's what he's damn sure doing. And this might be the first time where we see, at least in my lifetime, a Republican lose because of how much influence a random independent populist candidate had. Because this is different than in 2016, because he's going to end up getting more votes than both Jill Stein and Gary Johnson combined at the rate that RFK is going.
Except for George Bush Sr.
HW.
And Ross Perot.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, true. But it was looking like, so, you know, bringing up Ross Perot, there are some people that actually believe that RFK was asked to run as a Democratic op. There are people who believe that. And at first I'm like, that is crazy. Why would he do that? And people were saying, well, because they can't beat Trump on their own. So they need someone who is Trump adjacent, but is liberal enough to attract independent voters, but not extreme, but Trump adjacent enough to take his voters away because they want an alternative. And a lot of people split with Trump over the science juice, Operation Warp Speed stuff. And a lot of the people that I know that work for his campaign, that is the specific and only reason why they jumped ship. Right? So, and then a lot of leftists that were previously part of his campaign before his Israel stance, they obviously were never going to vote Democrat anyway. So it didn't really hurt the Dems. So now we're in a situation where the one who principally, even though the Democrats screwed over RFK Jr. the most, the ones who principally benefit from RFK Jr.'s campaign at this moment is actually the Democrats.
Yeah, I noticed RFK Jr.'s poll numbers have decreased ever since Kamala was announced as the nominee. He was polling at double digits at one point. It's continuing to decrease as the weeks. And I know he's running out of money. I predicted he would have to end up dropping out because he's running out of money. But if he does drop out, who do you think he's going to endorse?
I don't think he'll endorse either. Yeah, he definitely won't endorse the Democrats, and he can't endorse the Democrats because otherwise, first of all, why did you drop out the race?
Right.
So like, you know what I'm saying? Like, why did you drop out the primary and go through all and point your finger at the Democrats, become an independent and then endorse the Democrats after everything you did? He would lose his entire brand and he still has a business to run after. So I don't think that he would do that. And I don't think that he'll endorse Trump. I think that he would stay quiet, but staying quiet is effectively, it doesn't help Trump, right? Those voters will likely vote libertarian, vote for Jill Stein, or sit out. Or even, or the laggers, they might go to the Dems.
Well, because
they don't care about the genocide, right? They don't care about the genocide. And RFK speaks a lot to Black issues and like issues that you wouldn't really think that he speaks to that well, but he actually is good on like environmental issues. He's good on race issues, better than what people might perceive. He actually supports reparations, which was always a surprise to me. Like, so there are issues there that liberals liked him for because they thought he had a legitimate chance of winning before he started running out of money. So they might just end up going back enough, not all of them, but enough might end up going back to the Democratic Party. And the Republican, there might not be enough Trump supporters to overcome that. So Trump is screwing himself by not doing that ABC debate. I don't know why he's not doing it.
Yeah, I think that's a mistake for him. I will say RFK Jr. doesn't support cash reparations.
He doesn't support cash reparations?
No, he was asked that in an interview by Matt Hofra, and that video kind of went viral because people were taken aback when he said he doesn't support cash reparations because he was like,
he flipped because he got attacked for it.
Yeah, that's what I'm telling you. He said no because it's not fair because you're not giving it to everybody else, and I'm like,
see, but that's what I'm saying. Inconsistent. Like he's just going where the fuck the wind blows. I ain't got time for that.
Yeah, and B, I just want to comment. B said no reparations, no black vote. Fuck that third party BS. The third party candidates have reparations.
What about to say that? Yeah, that's what I was gonna say.
That's the part that's funny to me. It's like you can tell people that look at the platform, they actually have reparations. They're the only people that have reparations on their platform.
That's facts,
the only ones. There's one question here for you, Niko. It's from Sir Bikes a Lot Day. Please ask Niko, did CNN stream the Trump rally live in Pennsylvania during the assassination failure? JD's party played the biggest role in childless families. Ooh.
Really? Why do you feel like childless families are because they fight to make sure people have kids, right? I thought that was the opposite. But anyway, did CNN stream it? I don't know. I honestly don't. I feel like you know what? I think they did. Everybody, because BBC was there streaming. And the reason why was because this was supposed to be the like a celebration because the RNC convention was that Monday. So that's why everybody was paying attention. So, once again, a really convenient time for that to happen, but that's a whole different conversation for a different day. But
that's
the moral
right.
story is JD Vance, guys, he's a problem. If I know that there might be a few Trump supporters that are watching. I know a lot of people. I know Sabby attracts a lot of different viewers. If you are a Trump supporter, you should be worried because what should have been it should have been a slam dunk. This started out as a slam dunk election for Trump, and all of a sudden, after what should have been like a guarantee, because like this whole assassination attempt, it made it seem like he was going to be immortal. And he picks JD Vance and everybody's like, okay. I don't know if like people are like, do we cheer? Do we boo? Like, I don't know who the hell this guy is. They're like, he has a Netflix documentary. That's not a good start, honestly. Cause like, I'm not about to vote for somebody who had a Netflix documentary before I knew who the hell he was. You feel me? Obama makes sense. And we know why he has one, but Obama makes sense to have a Netflix documentary. Why does JD Vance from Ohio have a Netflix documentary as a senator? There are 99 other senators. Bernie don't even have a documentary yet on Netflix.
And Obama has Barack and Michelle Obama have a contract with Netflix.
Yeah, but those are the immortal deities of the damn black community still, unfortunately. So like, it makes sense that they have and they've already did their thing. Who the hell is JD Vance? It's like the daughter-in-law, of RFK Jr. I don't know if you knew that, but she has a documentary about her spy life. She's ex-CIA. She was a spy. I swear to God, this is the one managing his campaign. I'm not even joking, Sabs. I'm like, so hold on, she was super famous and rich before she became his guy. Like, and yeah, but it was just like a super weird coincidence that RFK Jr.'s son met her at a music festival. Like, just coincidental, like right as he was about to announce to run. Yeah, like, I'm not voting for nobody that got a fucking Netflix documentary before anyone knows who you are. That doesn't make any, no.
And it was and directed by Ron Howard.
Out of all, right? Like, Ron, how did you find this man? It's almost as if Peter Thiel made it happen, right? So that now, retrospectively and retroactively, you can go back and now I'm looking, oh, wow, actually, I can relate to this guy. It's like the marketing. It's like marketing before you knew that you were even going to be looking at him, like that people are going to be looking at him. But he knew, Peter Thiel knew in advance. So I don't know for a fact, but I would make a bet that his documentary is made within 3 years old, is it? I would bet money. Is it within the last 3 years?
All I know is that it just popped up on my Netflix homepage.
I'm gonna look it up right now. It's the Hillbilly Effigy, right? Or Elegy?
Yeah.
When did Hillbilly Elegy come out? Go to good old Brave browser. Oh, November of 2020. Exactly. It's almost like they were planning for this the entire time.
Oh my God.
It came out election month? Isn't that bizarre?
But we never heard about it. Why are we just hearing about it now?
Because it wasn't meant for us to be. It was supposed to sit there and marinate, so it doesn't look suspicious. Because it would look suspicious if it released like, you know, a month ago or 2 months ago, and then all of a sudden he's picked as the VP. It also would make more sense, to be honest, but it would still look suspicious. It would look like it was planned. But to me and to people who pay attention, you know, when somebody has a documentary about them, when they've accomplished, like, oh, he's a businessman. Oh, he was poor. Oh, he was in the military. Okay, so you just described what? 25% of white male America at 39, 40 years old? What does that mean? How is he significant? There's nothing significant about him. Like, I mean, yeah, he's a senator or he's a VP now, or it could be a VP, but like, the circumstances for him becoming that are actually not all that significant for him to have a Netflix documentary about it. That's my point.
Go buy a biopic.
Yeah, a biopic. But like what?
But still.
I deserve a biopic more than JD Vance did. Shit. Keep it real. You know what I'm saying? You ever had his life threatened? I don't think he ever had his life threatened. And I believe Amanda Zills about Kamala, by the way, when she said she wouldn't be surprised if it was Kamala that was trying to get her silenced, because whenever my video started going viral about Kamala in 2019, 2020, that's whenever the YouTube guy randomly found me and Fiorella and Pasta at a random event in California during the convention. And he told me specifically, and I called him over because I thought it was insane, that he's like, yeah, they're about to flip the algorithm on his head. I'm like, why? They're like, because you're going too viral and you're talking about Kamala. And we're like, what? He's like, I was like, but everybody's talking about Kamala. He's like, no, nobody was talking about Kamala, Niko. And I didn't think about it at the time, but it was true, because the white progressives, the latte liberals, they were a little bit hesitant to go hard at Kamala because she was a woman of color.
Yep.
And there was no one that wanted to call her out. Also, I forgot at the time that my videos at the time that now everybody knows about were so specific, because the story was my grandmother hated this bitch. Hated her, Sabby. My grandma sat on the phone with me for 4 hours. My grandma never talked to me. She talked to me about politics, but it was always really super general. When Kamala announced, my grandma sat on the phone with me for 4 hours convincing me I need to expose her and dedicate the next few weeks of my life doing so at the time. And so I'm telling stories about like DA stuff that no one had heard yet, stuff about her family that nobody had heard yet. Like, I was one of the first ones to specifically refer to the fact like that she was running on being an Indian before. Like, she never mentioned being black. Because I found it really bizarre. I was like, there's no way. Like, why would we not hear about a black DA, a black progressive DA in San Francisco, you know, especially because she was replacing a progressive white dude. And it's because, she didn't run on being black. She ran on being Indian, and told stories about her Indian heritage and how her aunt used to fly from India to help her campaign. Like, and my grandma was telling me all of this, and I was just telling the stories that no one had heard yet except for people from the Bay Area, and they were going viral, and this dude found me from YouTube. He knew I was going to be there because we had made an announcement, and he's like, I'm warning you right now, you know, get your ducks in a row because they're about to hit you. I was like, that's crazy. And
yeah, for those who are not aware, Niko started before the algorithm changed. And like back then, from what I understand, because even Kim Iverson had talked to me about this on the show before. She was like, when she first started, like she said she just kind of took off. And then she said, then they changed the algorithm, and it was like, so it didn't used to be that if you search for a topic, like for example, if you search for Bernie Sanders during that time, you would most likely get independent media that would appear first.
There was a time. So there was a time with Bernie that if you would type in his name, my channel would show up like within the first 5 videos on YouTube. On Tulsi, there was a time back when I first became her surrogate that I was #1 and Tulsi was #2 in her own category. And it's because the algorithm used to do this thing where they would suggest 70% of new content to you and they would suggest 70% of your content to new subscribers, or to potentially new subscribers, 30% to your subscribers. Now it's reversed. So you can't get the reach that you once had before. They're trying to fix it. My my guess is because they have some fear about Rumble and Twitter being competition, but that's basically it. But you are absolutely right. When I tell you that algorithm flipped on his head, he warned us. We did a video on it's on YouTube still. I was in the basement of the Convo couch at the time, and we were like, yeah, we're just letting y'all know this was about to happen. That's what he told us. Because he was the one, everybody in the partner program, you have your own team. So in case y'all don't know, that's how it works. Everybody in the YouTube partner program has their own team. And this guy was part of the team that helps with actually me and Convo Couch. Everybody on the MCSC network actually ended up being assigned to the same group, which is why when we all got demonetized and taken out the partner program, we all got hit on the exact same day at the exact same time with the exact same letter, like the exact same email. Yeah.
I remember that. But yeah, I think some people, especially if you're newer, you may not realize that, but it used to be like, for example, if I watched like Niko's show, the recommended video would be content similar to Niko, and it would be independent media. It wouldn't be CNN.
Yep.
And they changed, and that's how I found other independent commentators back in the day. But then they changed the algorithm, and then it was no longer directing me towards other independent commentators.
Yep. It was a monetary issue too, because the mainstream media, I found this out from somebody who switched from YouTube to working for Odyssey. So basically the mainstream media, they were getting the shit beat out of them by independent media. And not for nothing, but independent media was making a lot of money doing it. And they flipped it, and they started, the CPMs, they were paying mainstream media at one point like $20 like CPM, which for those of you who don't know, it's $1, or it's basically the amount of money you earn per 1,000 views. No independent media person would ever earn this because that's an insane number. But they flipped it on its head and they started paying out mainstream media $20 per 1,000 views. But the reason why they had to set it so high was because at the time, y'all weren't going to watch them. Nobody was. Y'all were coming to watch us. So that was the only way that it would even make any financial sense for mainstream media to be on YouTube and post so often, because they were getting so outpaced by the independent media. So it was like a two-headed monster. We were telling the truth and we were exposing them and becoming famous while telling the truth, which they were like, we can't allow this shit to continue. This is too dangerous. So they stopped that shit. And then the mainstream media was losing so much money, they were like, nah, we got to stop this.
That's right. Well, speaking of that, Niko, tell people where they can find you.
So you can look me up, Niko House, NIKOHOUSC. I'm on YouTube. You can find me on Rockfin as well. You can also find me on Twitter at Real Niko House, on Instagram at Real Niko House, and on Instagram, TikTok as well. They be hitting me hard on TikTok, so I don't really post there as often as I used to. But they just took down my Venezuela video off TikTok. Sabs say I violated community violations.
I can't remember the last time I posted on TikTok. I'm never good at that though. I was never good at TikTok.
Yeah, nah. I used to. I got like 13,000 followers on TikTok in like 3 months, and they were like, "Yeah, no, shut that shit down. Nope, not having it." Yeah, it's the game, man. We're just trying to stay afloat, guys. We're just trying to stay afloat. But yeah, I'm mostly on YouTube, Rockfin, Twitter.
All right, Niko, thank you so much for coming on.
Oh, of course. Thanks for having me, Sabs. Appreciate you.
Bye.
Bye.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, that was Niko House. Definitely make sure you follow Niko. He's doing really great work. He was one of the original, OGs in independent media that I used to watch before I started this show in 2021. So yeah, definitely check out Niko. We have three news stories that I want to cover tonight as well. But first and foremost, let's go ahead and give a shout out to everyone who's a Sabby patron. Thank you guys so much for holding down the fort around me. Shout out to everyone who is a Sabby patron. If you are interested in becoming a patron, I have 5 categories: Ultimate, Sabinators. There's also a group called Sabsters. Sorry, I don't know, my voice did that. And of course, Sabbies as well. Oh man, I'm in a silly mood and it's not even Friday. And they're also members. All of their names are listed here. You can also see their names scrolling across the bottom of the screen there on the ticker. And I want to give a special shout out to a new Sabby patron. Over here, we call them newbies. Let's give it up for Phyllis Foster in the house. Yep. Thank you guys so much. Really appreciate you. Gonna go to the comments here, and then we're gonna show that thumbnail to show you the other stories that we are discussing. So hang tight, fam. David, Sabby, what do you think of the opening ceremonies of the Olympics? I thought it was offensive. I have not watched the Olympics. And the reason why I haven't watched the Olympics is because I was pretty upset that Jaylen Brown was not allowed to be a part of the Dream Team, which I know is directly related to his support for Gaza. Same thing with Kyrie Irving. So I am actually not watching the Olympics. So I missed all of that. Everything people talking about the opening ceremonies and all, I didn't see any of that. Thank you for becoming a member, Laura Kaminsky. Give Laura a big whoop whoop. Thank you. Thank you, Measured Men. The difference is when it comes to us, we need a sponsor, which is hard to get in order to get to the level we deserve. Okay, I'm not sure what you're referring to, but thank you. Thank you for the super chat, sir. Bikes a lot day. Please mention Caleb Moppington. Niko knows Caleb. Didi did an excellent interview where he points out the two main factions of the elite. Yeah, Caleb was just on here. He's been on here a couple of times, but Niko knows, he knows who Caleb is. He knows about all that. Thank you, Derek. Kamala can't fill a stadium and we're supposed to believe those polls. Negative. The media won't show the mass disgruntled voters for her. Okay, so I did just see a quick video before I went live of the stadium at the Atlanta event that Kamala's supposed to be at right now. And I guess Meg the Stallion is the entertainment for the night. And I did see that it wasn't full, but they also said there's 30 minutes left. I don't know, but I mean, you shouldn't even have to have Meg the Stallion to come out. You know what I mean? Like Bernie was able to get 10,000 people on the lawn in Boston Common with no famous guest, like just like that. So thank you for this as well, Measured Men. She is a double sword. You can't critique me is because I'm black or woman or both. No way I'm voting for someone I can't critique. It's the gender agenda. Interesting. Thank you for that. Thank you, Derek. Why does every other group get an agenda, but Black Americans can't have one? Then it's problem when we bring it up. I've been saying that for quite some time. Thank you, Isaiah. We better have some I'm voting who want it. We better have some laughs. I'm voting for who want it. Interesting. Thank you, Perseverance Chameleon. You need a black lobby to act for you, like AIPAC. I wish we didn't have lobbies at all. I wish corporate money was not a part of electoral politics. And that way the politicians can actually work for the people they're supposed to represent. Thank you for this, Measured Men. The last straw was Kamala said 20 acres and a mule with her entire chest. I know she really is not good on reparations. Not good at all. Thank you for the super chat, DC. Hillbilly Elegy book came out 2016. Watch interviews. That's great. I still don't understand why he had a book. Like it's the same thing. Like who was this guy? Thank you for the super sticker, JF. And thank you, Sparky. Great work, Sabby and Niko. Thank you. All right. We have more to discuss. Let's go ahead and share that thumbnail, ladies and gentlemen, to see the other stories we're discussing tonight. A lot has been going on crazy this week. I don't even know how I keep up with this stuff sometimes. But also tonight, we are discussing Kamala Harris narrows VP picks. We're going to actually focus on those two right behind her. That is Josh Shapiro and that is Tim Walz. We're also discussing, if you have not heard about this by now, get ready, get buckled up, Jesus Christ, because it's a doozy, okay? Maduro win upsets the West. A lot is going on in Venezuela right now over this election. We're going to break that down. And I'm also going to explain to you what it means to be a part of that opposition and what that opposition actually represents. This is what corporate media is not going to tell you. So I'm going to explain it to you here. And of course, we're going to discuss Biden pushes Supreme Court reform. Interesting. He's trying to do this now. Again, they try to rush all these things through before the election in November. And of course, Niko House was just here. All right, let's go ahead and dive right in. If you haven't had a chance to do so, go ahead and smash the like button. And if you're new, don't forget to like, sub, and share. And let's keep the train rolling, ladies and gentlemen. We are starting out with Venezuela. A lot went down the other day. Venezuela had an election and Maduro won again. And now what's interesting about this is when corporate media first started reporting this, they said that Maduro and his opposition both claimed that they won the election. So you had both sides saying that they were the ones that won. In the end, the results revealed that Maduro won. But I want to start off with the way that CNN, corporate media in particular, were covering this. You have to understand what someone like Maduro means to the West, and especially according to the U.S. government, and what this is really all about. This is not just about Maduro. This is also about resources. And this is about anyone that is against U.S. intervention. And then it also, Israel is mixed in with this as well. There's a lot going on here. Let's start off by breaking it down. That first announcement here, when they said that both sides were saying that they won.
Now we are continuing to monitor the situation in Venezuela, where authoritarian President Nicolas Maduro has been declared the winner of Sunday's election. That's according to the country's National Electoral Council. Maduro suggested there would be bloodshed if he lost, but shifted his rhetoric after being declared the winner.
Lo dije. I said it. There was peace before, and there was during, and we have it. And there will be peace, stability, and justice after the 28th of July, starting from today. Peace, justice, respect of the law, and justice.
Well, Maduro's main challenger was opposition candidate Edmundo Gonzalez Urrutia, a former diplomat who the coalition rallied behind after their two preferred candidates were barred from running. Speaking in Tokyo, moments after the result was announced, U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken called on the electoral authorities to ensure transparency and accountability.
We've seen the announcement just a short while ago by the Venezuelan Electoral Commission. We have serious concerns that the result announced does not reflect the will or the votes of the Venezuelan people.
Let me go ahead and correct that. What he really means to say is that it doesn't respect the will of the U.S. government. This is Antony Blinken here. The U.S. government is not happy with the results of the Venezuela election. And this is just another example of the U.S. government, again, trying to determine and intervene in another country's election. And this is not the first time. So here we are again, where the same country that accuses Russia and China of trying to meddle in their elections has absolutely no problem meddling in other countries' elections. Now, I am going to break this down to you and explain to you why what he is saying about the results of the election and the U.S. government not believing it is BS, because there have been multiple independent journalists on the ground in Venezuela covering this election. And what they have told me is that Venezuela's elections are actually one of the most secure elections that we have in the world. It is more secure than U.S. elections, right? So, of course, Antony Blinken is going to lean that out. And this is why it's important that you follow these independent journalists. Make sure you follow people like Anya Parampil, who wrote an entire book called Corporate Coup about her time in Venezuela and what was done there during that time. She has been there. She has covered this information. Make sure you follow people like Ronnie Akalik, who is also in Venezuela right now covering these elections. And also Professor Morandi is also talking about this, has been on the ground as well. So there are a number of people that have been there on the ground, and their reporting is a lot different from mainstream media.
It's critical that every vote be counted fairly and transparently, that election officials immediately share information with the opposition and independent observers without delay, and that the electoral authorities publish the detailed tabulation of votes. The international community is watching this very closely, and will respond accordingly.
And there it is, right? The international community is watching this very closely, more so the U.S. government. Now, Antony Blinken is big mad, folks. Antony is big mad. Professor Morandi tweeted this, and I want to show you guys this as well. I am currently in Venezuela. Every single international election observer that I have spoken with has stated that the presidential election was fully transparent and that the declared result is completely accurate. And you can see the results here from Camilla. You should follow her as well on Twitter, Camilla, at Camilla Press. Breaking, Nicolas Maduro. So he has over 5.1 million votes, 51.2%. And Edmundo Gonzalez had 44.2%. So you have 51.2% and 44.2%. It's not even close. Okay. That was at 80% of tables counted, 59% turnout. So these are the people that were actually there. Now, the U.S. government may not like the fact that Maduro has won. You yourself may not be fond of Maduro, but that doesn't mean you get to lie about what happened at that election, about the results, and then also try to implement a coup because you are unhappy that the leader that you wanted to win did not win. The U.S. government is notorious for doing this. Now we go on for more here. And I believe I also do have this from, yes, Anya's coming up after, Ronnie is coming up after this. Anya Parampil, I suggest you follow her as well. When it comes to Venezuela, again, she wrote a book. The book has been published. I think she was on a book tour recently called Corporate Coup. It is about the coups in Venezuela. She was there on the ground. I heavily recommend that when it comes to this topic, that you follow her for this information, because again, this is someone who researched this for years in person. I want you to see what she said. Don't turn off your critical thinking skills just because you have been told Venezuela is socialist your whole life. The Venezuelan opposition have claimed fraud and contested virtually every election that they have lost since Chavez came to power. Yet they can never provide evidence. And that is because Venezuela's electoral process is far more secure than what we have in the United States. I describe the voting process in the country, which I have observed firsthand in my book, Corporate Coup. And by the way, I interviewed Anya about that book, I believe a couple of months ago. It was right before it was published. So you can search for that on my channel where she talks about her experience in Venezuela. Now listen to this. In Venezuela, voting machines were activated through a two-step verification process consisting a physical check of the voter's national identity card and a digital scan of their fingerprint. After casting their vote, the voter received a physical receipt of their ballot, which they can personally drop in a secure box on site. The voter then signed their name and stamped their thumbprint on a physical electoral registry to certify their participation. When polls closed, authorities assuaged fears of digital vote tampering by checking their final electronic tally against random sampling of 54% of the physical ballot receipts submitted by voters at polling stations. Citizen and international observers are present throughout this process. So does everybody hear that? Citizens and international observers. Do not fall for claims of fraud unless hard evidence is produced, especially because further escalation in Venezuela will only result in civil conflict and perhaps even a regional war in the Western Hemisphere. You think our border looks bad now? Wait until Washington turns up the heat on Caracas. Oh, And the Russian military has strong military ties with Venezuela and a presence within the country. We are not only talking about regional war here, but an expansion of the world war currently raging against Russia and its allied rising powers. Are you ready for that war to hit Washington's backyard? This is something I think people really need to think about before we even get to the coup part. This is very important. So this piece here, where Anya explains the migration. So a lot of people have been complaining about the border issue. A lot of people have been complaining. They said, well, there's migrants coming from different countries and all this kind of stuff. One of the things that Anya really has broken down, at least on this show, is that you have to understand why they're coming here in the first place. So if you're looking at the U.S. government implementing more sanctions on Venezuela, which is possible, I could see them doing that. Sanctions ruin your country economically. They really hurt the country. So if your country is ruined economically, they're destroying your country. What are you going to do? You are going to leave. And the hits are coming from the United States. Now, interestingly enough, the sanctions that the U.S. government put on Russia have not seemed to work. Russia has been able to beat those. Venezuela has had to deal with this for years. So this is why I always say it's important that you connect domestic policy to foreign policy. So if it angers you that there are migrants coming across the border, you have to take a step back and look and see, why are they coming here? What is happening? So here we go again. So this is what Anya is trying to warn you about. Let's get to the socialism piece here, which I also think is important. One more point. The vast majority of Venezuela's economy, hotels, restaurants, stores, are privately owned and operated. Venezuela's socialism is largely defined by the fact its industries, including its oil sector and precious mineral reserves, are nationally operated. This makes Venezuela comparable to Russia and many other modern states that consider the natural resources stored within the nation to be the property of the republic rather than a few at the top. Now, why would the U.S. have an issue with the oil? I have said this multiple times before. If you look at the countries that the U.S. tends to target, I'm willing to bet you there's probably some resources there in that country that the U.S. wants that they're not able to have. Venezuela is an obsession in Washington because before Chavez, U.S. and European companies practically owned the country, and the IMF set its domestic economic agenda. Venezuela is home to the largest oil and untapped gold reserves in the world. This is why Americans have been inundated with propaganda about Venezuela since it began the process of asserting sovereign ownership over that natural wealth. That is what their socialism is primarily about. So shout out to Anya here for this. Like I said, again, go to the people who have been there, that are very much aware of what's happening in Venezuela. But you guys see where this is going? Again, oil, resources. Now, Rania Khalek was there covering the elections, and we're going to dive into the part about the opposition, because what corporate media, again, is also probably not going to make clear to you is that the opposition is on Israel's side. So we're connecting different pieces here. Venezuela, the United States, Russia, and now we're also bringing in Israel to the mix as well. So shout out to Rania Khalek for this. One, this is a thread. Let's be clear about which side you are on if you oppose Venezuela's elected government. Israel's side. I'm getting angry responses to my Venezuela reporting from people who purport to be pro-Palestine, yet repeat lies about Venezuela promoted by the same media justifying genocide on Gaza. And this is an educational handicap I think that we need to fix, right? Because I'm noticing it too. Some of the same people that are pro-Palestine, they get that right. They get Gaza right, but they're getting other things wrong. you know, other things wrong. So shout out to Rania for calling that out, because this does need to be said. You are still believing the lies that are told to you by corporate media. And that is the same media that's been lying to you about what's happening in Gaza. They've been lying to you to protect Israel. And a lot of people are falling for that. Don't fall for that. So if you get Gaza right, that's great. But then I want you to make the connection to other countries as well. Let's go on. Venezuela opposition leader, Marina Corina Machado, who is currently behind the violent coup attempt, loves Israel. In 2018, she wrote a letter to Israel's Netanyahu begging him to launch a military intervention against her country's socialist government. This woman right here, this is what the West wanted. Do people see this? This is what the US government wanted. Again, she is on Israel's side. So it's not just Maduro. Everybody wants to just say, oh, it's Maduro. He's a dictator. Da, da, da. No, there are a lot of moving pieces here. So it goes on to say, let's go down to this video. Here is Venezuela's US-backed opposition leader, Maria Corina Machado, promising to reestablish the Venezuelan embassy in occupied Jerusalem. So let's hear this video here. And this is what I wanted to show people. You have to get all the pieces.
Thank you, and we'll stay in touch. And I promise we one day we'll have a close relationship between Venezuela and Israel. And I believe, and I can announce this, that our government will move our Israeli embassy to Jerusalem. That will be part of our support to the state of Israel.
Wow, in God's will. Thank you so much. Thank you.
So there you go. They want to move the embassy. So do you see, again, to Rania's point, if you support the opposition, you're actually on Israel's side. That's what Israel wants. And the US government wants what Israel wants. So you see how this all goes together? There's more. In 2020, Maria Corina Machado signed a cooperation agreement with Israel's Netanyahu-led Likud party on political, ideological, and social issues, as well as advancing on issues related to strategy, geopolitics, and security. The same Netanyahu carrying out the genocide in Gaza. So she is aligned with the Likud party. So this is what people are supporting. And here's that piece of information here. Start here. The Foreign Relations Division of the Likud Party, represented by Eli Vered-Hazen, and the Vente Venezuelan Party, represented by Maria Corina Machado, undertake to forge an alliance between our two parties to cooperate on political, ideological, and social matters, as well as advancing cooperation on issues related to strategy, geopolitics, and security, among others, in order to create an operational partnership. So by Maduro winning, it's not just a lost cause for Israel. It's also a lost cause for the US government, because the US government said that their interests align with Israel. So we always got to make sure we follow all of these cues here. We make sure we follow the dots. And here's another one. Look at this. Here is Venezuela's opposition leader, Maria, thanking Israel for recognizing the attempted US-backed coup leader, Juan Guaidó. So listen to this. So Rania brought hella receipts.
On behalf of the people of Venezuela, I would like to thank Benjamin Netanyahu, the Prime Minister of the State of Israel, for his recognition of Juan Guaidó as the interim president of Venezuela. Prime Minister Netanyahu joins our many allies in the hemisphere and the world in welcoming Venezuela back to the bloc of Western democratic nations that oppose despot and oppression. We certainly have a common enemy with Israel, the criminal forces that undermine freedom and peace in the world. Venezuela was one of the nations that back in 1947 in the General Assembly of the United Nations supported Resolution 181 that led to the creation of the State of Israel in 1948. Since then, we had good and strong diplomatic relations. That's why we, the Venezuelan people, look forward to the reestablishment of the diplomatic relations with the State of Israel. I want to reaffirm the valuable contribution the Jewish community has given to the development of Venezuela through decades. And even though many have been forced to leave our country, we want and expect that they come back to rebuild our nation. Venezuela's reconstruction will require strong support and involvement in areas such as medicine, security, rural development, and technology, where Israel can be a genuine partner. I want to express how meaningful it was for the Venezuelan people that this recognition to the genuine government of Venezuela came precisely the day of Holocaust recognition. I myself look forward to visit the State of Israel as soon as we conquer freedom.
So everybody see a recurring theme here? All roads lead back to Israel and the US government. Recurring theme. So shout out to Rania, one more as well. This is another thing people need to understand. Maduro actually supports Palestine. Rania puts here, meanwhile, Maduro loves Palestine. If Maduro was unseated, this is coming from Alan McLeod. If Maduro is unseated in July, some of the loudest applause will come from Tel Aviv. The bus driver turned politician has proven to be one of the staunchest international critics of Israel and supporters of Palestine. Israel is committing massacres in the Gaza Strip in front of the world's eyes without anyone deterring it, claiming that Israel's actions constitute some of the worst barbarity seen since the days of Hitler. Maduro went on to condemn the European Union as accomplices in genocide. Despite its own problematic economic situation, Venezuela has sent tons of aid to Gaza. Everybody hear this? That includes food, oil, drinking water, medical supplies, water pumps, and mattresses. So again, supporting Gaza, supporting the Palestinian cause. Even the president of Mexico has something to say about all of this. So we're going to go ahead and bring him in. We're bringing in AMLO, and he wants to know, why is the Organization of American States meddling in Venezuelan elections? Listen to this.
Que respeten. Ahí está. ¿Qué se tiene que meter la OEA? ¿Qué se tienen que meter? O sea, eso es injerencismo. Por eso la OEA no tiene credibilidad.
So he's saying the Americas don't have any credibility.
¿Con qué fundamento la OEA?
Under what basis does the OAS claim the other candidate won?
Tiene que ganó el otro candidato. Que respeto.
So again, that's AMLO. President of Mexico, again, calling out the US government. Why are you meddling here? So all of that happened. And then there was a coup attempt. Now we're going to follow Alan for this one as well. There is an attempted coup. There's an attempted coup d'etat underway here in Venezuela as the US-backed opposition is trying to overturn yesterday's election results. It's wild, fam.
There is no doubt that an attempted coup d'etat is underway here in Venezuela. The only question is, how successful will it be? Yesterday, less than 24 hours ago, President Nicolas Maduro won the 2024 Venezuelan elections. He gained 51% of the vote. His closest challenger, Edmundo Gonzalez, won 44%. The results were immediately ratified by several regional countries, including Bolivia, Nicaragua, Honduras, and Cuba. It was also endorsed by large countries like China and Russia. The United States, however, immediately cast aspersions on the events, saying that there were serious irregularities. Those words prompted Edmundo Gonzalez and his supporters to come out into the streets today and vent their fury. Many shops closed early or didn't open at all today, fearing the worst. In certain areas, it's very calm, it's very tranquil. In other areas, it's extremely tense. And in still more, we see thousands of people out on the streets, burning tires, setting fire to different things, even attacking police officers. Nicolas Maduro has warned that the opposition plans a bloodbath and that this could turn into something of a civil war. Mint Press will keep you updated from Caracas as events transpire.
So everybody remember this. And again, if you think about who is calling for peace and who's actually committing the violence, you can see that a lot of times the opposition here that was basically trying to make it seem like, well, Maduro is not going to be peaceful, etc. But you do have the opposition pushing that violence into the streets. And then Maduro also called this out as well. He said, I'm getting a video here of the burning of PSUV's headquarters in Calabozo. This is very typical of what they call color revolutions designed by the Americans. It's a script. Listen to this.
Me está llegando una imagen acá de la quema de la casa de el PSUV en Calabozo. Aquí está, en Calabozo, por aquí, ¿no? Vamos a ponerlo otra vez. Grupo de delincuentes. Vamos por todos ustedes, tengan la seguridad. Cuando yo digo algo, lo hago, lo hacemos. Igualmente han procedido a quemar alcaldías, a atacar sedes del poder público. Esto es muy típico, Diosdado, de lo que llaman la revolución de los colores, que diseñan los gringos. Es un guión, correcto, es un guión.
So again, he acknowledges that it's a script, it's the same playbook.
Que ellos pretenden traer a Venezuela. Tranca de calles, autopistas, quemas, ponen cauchos, queman. Y la mayoría de esta gente drogada y armada.
Corey, we can go ahead and go to part 2 for tight VNC. So everybody sees what's happening like instantly, because the person that won that they didn't want to win, all of a sudden is just, it's wild. It's crazy. We're definitely going to be keeping an eye on Venezuela to make sure things don't continue to escalate, because this is not good. We have too much going on at the same time internationally. You have the war with Russia and Ukraine. You have Israel is still bombing kids in Gaza. I just talked about the school that was just bombed. On Sunday, there was another school that was bombed. More Palestinian kids have been killed. I just saw a headline earlier before I went live that said that Israel has now bombed Beirut. Like, it's crazy. There's conflict in the Middle East. There's conflict with Russia and Ukraine. Now you have craziness happening in Venezuela. And again, I just want to tell people, a lot of times, a lot of this is prompted by the U.S. government. The U.S. government pushes. They push these coups. The coup in Venezuela, that was the U.S. government. This has happened multiple times. The U.S. government tries to be the world's police. And as soon as these countries decide that they don't want to do business with the West anymore because of the way that the U.S. has been, and they decide they want to collaborate with other countries, all of a sudden they're evil. because they decide they want to join BRICS, because they want to work with other countries. They want a multipolar world. They don't want to be dominated by the US government that has really been policing the world. And it's a problem. And so for all the people who are coming out saying, oh, but he's a dictator, da, 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 and all that kind of stuff, that's not our space. That's not our place. It's not our place to tell another country who their leader should be. It's not our place to tell another country who they should be voting for. Don't we criticize other countries and accuse them for meddling in our elections? But it's okay for the US government to tell every other country who should be in charge of their country and do their bidding? I'm against US intervention. We should not be involved with these countries. Leave these countries alone and let them govern themselves. I really believe a lot of these countries would be better off today had it not been for US intervention. I really do believe that. That's how I feel. Going to some of the comments here in the chat. Crystal, the US has been trying to control Venezuela for years. Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Thank you for this, Anon Messi. I hired a student worker whose dad worked in oil in Venezuela before they fled here. I was asked for an employment reference for her potential employment in the department. What is this? The Deaf and Counter. Oh, in the Deaf and Counter Intel department, CIA, NSA, etc., as a contractor. Wow. Thank you, La Sonora. The Gusano base in Doral, Florida was having a tantrum. Yep. Shout out to Tim. Side note, Sabby, we can see those gains. Oh, thank you. Yeah, buddy. Thank you, Kukwita. Obama started the coup for Venezuela, continuing by Trump. Lance, if the U.S. is the world's police, they're Alonzo from Training Day. Oh, God, don't bring me back to the Training Day quotes. Don't bring that back. And thank you, Roger. Told you to watch the government when the Olympics jump off. Yep, you were right. You were correct, Roger. Absolutely. All righty. 2 quick announcements. Want to go ahead and shout out. And then we have 2 other stories here. We are doing a back to school barbecue. We are giving away school supplies. I want to go ahead and bring this up here. This is the RBN Boston chapter. We do mutual aid. So for those who are new and don't know, one of the things that I do aside from the show is activism and organizing. So we do organize in our respective areas. Those of us at RBN, JB has the Orlando chapter. I'm in Boston area, so I have the Boston chapter. Nick is in Kansas City. Rome is in Detroit. So we have an event coming up, back to school barbecue, Sunday, August 18th at 12 p.m. This is going to be in the Roxbury neighborhood in Massachusetts. By the way, if you want to come help, feel free to let me know. But there is a whole group of us that will be involved in this. We are giving away school supplies and we are going to feed people while they are there, because the reality is I don't like a drop off and pick up. Our goal is $3,000. So far, we've raised $360. Thank you guys so much for that. But that is our goal. I'll be sure to put the spot fund link in the chat. The biggest thing, I think that people, actually, I put the wrong one. The biggest thing I think that people, there's the share button. Sorry. May not be aware of. At least I wasn't aware of it because I don't have kids. But apparently, like, the school supply requests are getting to be ridiculous. So we do have the list of what is required for schools in Roxbury. And I thought it was a bit ridiculous what they're asking kids to bring nowadays. Like, it's a lot. And it does add up. So this is one of the events that we're doing this year. I think we may also do, I'm not sure if we're going to do the Thanksgiving or the toy drive. I'm not sure, but we do meet every now and then. But right now, this is the one that we're focusing on, is the back to school one, because that is a big need there. thank you and shout out to all of you that have already donated. I've been shouting out people on Twitter individually, those of you that donated for the back to school drive. And another thing I want to say too, at the end of the day, for those of you who are new and don't know, I don't believe that a politician is going to save us. Nobody is coming to save you. We have to save ourselves as community. So regardless of who wins the presidential election, when it comes to our communities, we have to help each other. And that's something we believe firmly at RBN. So we're really big on mutual aid. Okay. Let's go ahead and do one more announcement. This is interesting. I forgot to tell you guys about this as well. Caleb Maupin was just on the show. Remember, his book about Kamala Harris was censored. Well, apparently the book is now back on Amazon. So I'm not sure if I'm going to post the clip of that interview because I don't want to confuse people. Because if they see the clip of the interview and now the book is back there, it might confuse them. I don't know. I can talk to Eric about that. But his goal is to distribute it in bulk at the DNC and to let people in Chicago know the truth about Kamala Harris. So he's asking people to help him spread the word there. So I will go ahead and share this as well, because I think this is important and people need to know the truth. So for Caleb's thing here, and I don't know why it puts the whole chat. The GoFundMe link is there. I put that in the chat. Help Caleb out there to get the word out at the DNC convention. There's going to be a number of people that will be protesting at that event, just FYI. So, yeah. Okay. We're moving on to the next story. Interestingly enough, as many times as Joe Biden said that he was not going to try to reform the Supreme Court, now all of a sudden he has decided to change his mind. It's interesting. I don't know if he's just trying to do this to help out Kamala come November, but he is trying to change his mind on this. I'm going to get into this clip and then I'm going to explain to you why this is mute at this point. And this is Johnny come lately. This will not work. He should have done this a long time ago. Let's go ahead and get into this clip here from News Nation.
Breaking news for you this morning, straight from the White House. No one is above the law. That's President Biden's message as he proposes massive new changes to the Supreme Court. The president releasing a major new reforms plan for the Supreme Court with details in an op-ed published in the Washington Post just about 30 minutes ago. The president says he will work with Congress to pass the major reforms, including imposing term limits for justices. Democratic lawmakers this morning now pushing to get the Supreme Court on the ballot in November. News Nation's Tom Dempsey is in Washington, D.C. for us this morning with the breaking details on this sweeping new plan. Tom, good morning.
Hey, good morning, Brooke. Yeah, just about 30 minutes ago, President Joe Biden's team made public this announcement calling for significant reform with the Supreme Court, including pushing for term limits for the justices, where every 2 years, a president would appoint a justice to serve an 18-year term on the high court. The president's team saying that this proposed change would ensure that no president, any single president, can have undue influence on the court. Other proposed changes include the No One is Above the Law amendment to the Constitution, which would
pause. So the reason why I believe this is being pushed forward is because of the ruling that came from the Supreme Court that basically protects Donald Trump and any other president that comes after him for basically being above the law, which I would consider presidents above the law anyway, even when they're not president. I mean, have we seen a president like, really? So let's think about that, for example. But president calls for reform, amendment to limit presidential immunity. That's in reference to the ruling from the Supreme Court towards Donald Trump. Term limits for SCOTUS justices. I'm assuming that has to do with the conservative court that we have now. Too many conservative justices on the court. And binding code of conduct for SCOTUS. Now, I want to go ahead and say this here. I heavily approve of term limits. I've been calling for that for a long time. I agree with that, not just for SCOTUS, but I believe that Congress should also have term limits as well, right? So the president of the United States has term limits, right? They can only serve 2 consecutive terms, right? Okay, so everybody else should have term limits too. I don't approve of a lifetime appointment, and I've had frustration about this for quite some time. I don't know about you, but I've never had a job where I was given a lifetime appointment. In my state, it's always been an at-will employer state. Every place that I've worked for, they explained to you during orientation that they can fire you with or without just cause. So why did the Supreme Court get this type of special treatment? No, it should never be a lifetime appointment. So I do agree with that. Now, let's go a little bit forward here, and I'm going to tell you why this is not going to work, though, unfortunately.
Limit immunity for former presidents and leave open the chance they could be prosecuted in federal court for crimes committed while in office. This comes after the Supreme Court earlier this month ruled that presidents have some immunity for official acts while in office in response to a challenge from former President Trump's legal team in the federal election interference case against him. President Biden's team also calling for a binding and enforceable code of conduct with the Supreme Court, requiring justices to disclose gifts, refrain from public political activity, and recuse themselves from cases if they or a spouse have a financial or conflict of interest with the case.
Okay, so the financial conflict of interest, that is referring to the articles of impeachment that AOC presented against Clarence Thomas and Sam Alito. Right. So they had some financial dealings there that were not up to code. And I've said this before, when they passed the legislation that basically said that officials can now take bribes, which they are referring to it as a gift. They were protecting themselves. So I was right about that. So here we go. Here we are.
In a statement, President Joe Biden saying, quote, "This nation was founded on a simple yet profound principle. No one is above the law. Not the president of the United States, not a justice on the Supreme Court of the United States. No one." And he goes on to say, quote, "What is happening now is not normal, and it undermines the public's confidence in the court's decisions, including those impacting personal freedoms. We now stand in a breach." The president's team saying they will work with Congress to pass these big changes for the Supreme Court. And we expect President Biden to talk more about these proposed changes during a stop in Texas later today to mark the 60th anniversary of the Civil Rights Act. Brooke?
Yeah, some strong words from the president in this op-ed, again, released just moments ago, even calling one of the reforms he's proposing common sense. I think, Tom, a lot of people, as they're going to hear this breaking news this morning, are going to think about the timing of this announcement, right? It's pretty interesting, coming just over 3 months from the election and from a president who's already said he's not running for re-election.
Right. He's not running for re-election, but still, I think Joe Biden is a little bit salty. We talked about the story yesterday of the Seymour Hersh article that revealed that Obama basically, put this coup together against Joe Biden. And they basically all got together with him and Chuck Schumer and Nancy Pelosi and Hakeem Jeffries. They all got together and decided we're going to push this mofo out. Right. So Biden didn't like that. And Biden decided to clap back. So once that happened, Joe Biden said, you know what? I'll go ahead and decide not to run for re-election then. But then I'm going to also nominate and endorse Kamala Harris. And that was a jab at Obama because Barack Obama told him he would not openly, readily endorse Kamala Harris for president because he did not believe that Kamala Harris could beat Donald Trump. So Joe Biden did that as a little bit of a jab towards Obama. So this could be a way of Joe Biden trying to say, I'm going to do as much stuff as I can so I don't go down as Genocide Joe. You still will be remembered for genocide, Joe. You'll be remembered for that and the crime bills and the racist comments that you made and the Anita Hill appearance and the courtroom scene where you decided to say you wanted to cut Medicare and Social Security and you said you wanted all those people off the street and you didn't care what neighborhood they came from. You'll be remembered for those things, Joe.
Yeah, not a coincidence that this announcement is being announced less than 100 days before Election Day. And also keep in mind that some Democrats have been really pushing for changes on the Supreme Court, especially after that immunity ruling earlier this month with former President Donald Trump. Also very important to note, Justices Clarence Thomas and Samuel Alito have been at the center of some controversy on the court after last year when ProPublica reported describing Justice Thomas receiving undisclosed luxury vacations paid for by Republican megadonor Harlan Crow for 2 decades. Conservative activist Leonard Leo faces accusations of organizing a trip to a luxury fishing lodge in Alaska for Supreme Court Justice Samuel Alito back in 2008, which he did not disclose. Alito also faced controversy earlier this year when a New York Times report described an upside-down American flag flying at his home soon after January 6, as well as an Appeal to Heaven flag last summer, which some participants on January 6 carried. So all these things likely playing a role into this announcement earlier this morning for the Biden team. Brooke.
The Biden administration and the president, for his part, not naming the justices or former President Donald Trump, but certainly alluding to all of them. All right, Tom Dempsey in D.C., thank you.
Thanks for watching. Yeah, so a lot of corruption that has been happening there. I'm glad it's getting more attention. But here's the problem you're going to run into, folks. Now, Kamala Harris has tweeted this as well. There is a crisis of confidence facing the Supreme Court. That is why the President Biden and I are calling on Congress to pass critical reforms that will help restore confidence in the court and strengthen our democracy. And here it is here. Calling for reforms, again, term limits, binding ethic rules for the Supreme Court, and no immunity for crimes of a former president committed in office. Now, let me just go ahead and say this. Here's the problem. Calling on Congress to pass critical reforms. Honey, the time to do this would have been when the Democrats had the House. The Republicans have the House. The Democrats don't have the House. This is what I mean when I say that Democrats are reactive instead of proactive. They don't prepare for gloom and doom. They let the gloom and the doom happen, and then they react. That's what they do. And that's how we get here. So obviously, the Republican House is not going to pass this. So it's not even going to make it to the Senate because they know this is a jab at the conservative justices and the Supreme Court. So they're not going to pass this. Where was this when you had control of the House? And this is not the first time they did this, fam. They've done this as long as I can remember. They did it under Obama. Don't you remember Barack Obama? He said that he would codify Roe v. Wade. That was his number one thing that he said that he would get done. First day in office, Obama wins and says, we are not going to do that. And he blamed it on Lieberman. We couldn't do it because of Lieberman. But even Ro Khanna told me himself on this show that Obama still could have, ended the filibuster. Still could have done that. This is the game. They don't do everything that they can do while they have the majority, while they can do it. They wait and give you a little bit of crumbs, and then they hang that over your head. And that's how they get you to vote for them again. If you vote for us this time, we'll make it happen. So here's the rhetoric that's going to come down the pipeline, folks. Write this down. President Biden and I wanted Congress to pass this so we could try to reform the Supreme Court. But unfortunately, the Republicans voted against it. So we didn't get it accomplished. So in order for us to get this accomplished, you will have to vote for the Democrats. You're going to have to come out heavily in November and vote for Democrat candidates for the House and for the Senate so that we can gain control of the House again and get a majority in the Senate. And then we can get this passed. Ladies and gentlemen, it's the same script over and over, fam. Now, what's the difference between the two? One thing I will say about the Republican Party, they tend to be a little bit more proactive instead of reactive. The first year that Donald Trump was president, and no, I don't support Donald Trump. Again, I always have to say that because people will tune in and be like, oh, you for Trump then, you for Trump. But the first year that Donald Trump was president, he got a lot of things done. When they have the majority, they get things done that they want to get done. I may not agree with what they're trying to fucking pass, but they get it done. The Democratic Party, they have the majority and they just sit on it. Just sit. Barack Obama did this too. He did this. People are like, well, you guys forget that Barack Obama did not have a majority and da-da-da-da. Barack Obama, the first 2 years, could have gotten things done. When we're talking about Obamacare, to pass the type of healthcare legislation that he really wanted to pass, because he watered it down to please the Republicans, he could have gotten that done his first 2 years. This is intentional. They wait till Republicans, and we can't do it because they have the majority. So this is not going to be done because Democrats don't have the House majority. So this is theater, folks. Don't fall for this. And again, I agree with term limits. It needs to happen. And it needs to happen across the board, not just with the Supreme Court. It needs to happen with Congress too, boo. Because I'm getting really tired of some of these politicians staying in office until they're like 98, 99 years old and they can barely talk and you're just wheeling them in. That was Dianne Feinstein. That was ridiculous. But here we are. Let's go to some of the comments here, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for the super chat, Shalom. This is why I hate the January 6th narrative. It was bad, but all the people in that building have no problem creating those situations in other countries. They just don't like it when it's at their door. That's a good point. Oof. B says, all I can say is Trump had interest rate low. I was able to buy a house. Gas was $1.34 in Tulsa, and I didn't even look at the price of groceries. Yeah, I was able to buy a house when Trump was president too. I would not be able to buy a house now. I wouldn't be able to buy this house now. There's no way. There's just no way whatsoever. But I hear where you're coming from, B. Yeah, a lot of people have that complaint. Thank you, Janine. Joe's ass should have been running the country like he would be dead after his first term. Cash reparations, defunding the police, executive orders, etc. There's so many things like, man, fam, if that were me, I would have been like, okay, day one, everybody get out. You walk into the Oval Office, you sit down, day one, all these people come in, Mrs. President, Mrs. President, Mrs. President, everybody get out. Give me time to think. And I make my list. One thing I like to do is make lists. I make my list. This is what we're going to do. Bam, 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 bam. All in the first week. There's no excuse. Because one thing I will say is Trump showed you that it can be done. He did it very quickly. But no, the Democrats, they just wait and sit on things and shake hands with donors and all this stuff. It's ridiculous. Thank you, Steph. The Democrats hold reproductive rights hostage. That's right. Roe v. Wade could have been codified under Barack Obama. It is a hot mess. Okay. Oh, there's another one too. There's another one here that said, oh, I lost it. I hate when it moves. Oh, here it goes. Uncle Dut. Yep. Bought my house during the Trump administration. Thank God I bought it when I did. Yeah, man, because like the interest rates were really low. And I'm telling you, if we would have waited, like my husband and I talk about this, if we would have waited until that next year, was that next year? Yeah. If we would have waited until 2021, we would have not been able to. We bought it in 2020. Interesting. We're moving on to the next story. So it is very clear now that Kamala Harris has narrowed down her choices for VP. And I think you need to see some of these picks. Of course, you guys know she was going to pick a white male, similar to Obama, to I guess, make her campaign more palatable or whatever to white voters. So of course, she's going to do that. And that is all she's looking at. I haven't even seen her entertain someone else of a different race or whatever. But now that has been narrowed down. And we're going to focus on a couple of these because there are pros and cons about them. I'm not voting for Kamala regardless of who she picks. I think there's a poll question there for you guys about that. Some of you may want to wait and answer that poll until after you see these picks here. But we're going to go ahead and get started with this clip from CNN. I think you guys need to see who she has narrowed it down to. One quick note, Roy Cooper, governor of North Carolina. I have a couple friends that live in North Carolina. Back in my old school NC days, some of them are still there. And they have talked to me about Roy Cooper before. But Roy Cooper was one of the possibilities for her VP, and she has decided now she is not going to continue on with him. Some people are surprised by that because they were pretty close, but it is announced here, and we'll get to the other picks, that she is not moving forward with Roy Cooper.
Breaking news, we are learning one of the men viewed as a top contender to become Harris's running mate has taken himself out of consideration. A source telling CNN that the North Carolina governor, Roy Cooper, expressed concern about going through the vetting process at the age of 67 and about the state's lieutenant governor performing his duties if he was pulled out of the state. Jeff Zeleny is out front live from the key swing state of Michigan. So, Jeff, obviously, this is a development. Some had pointed to North Carolina as, changing the map, and that the governor there on the ticket could have assisted with that. But now he's making it clear that that will not happen. What are you learning about the Veep stakes tonight?
Aaron, we know that this is just one more example. This is a very accelerated search process. I am told tonight that this decision could come within the week or certainly before August 7th. My colleague MJ Lee and I are reporting that the North Carolina governor is no longer in consideration, withdrawing his name. I am told because he simply was not at the top of the list. Age has been a concern, I'm told, from some in the Harris campaign. He's 67 years old. Of course, she is trying to turn the page and look toward a more vigorous campaign, a more youthful campaign, perhaps. This does not mean that North Carolina is not still a battleground state in the eyes of the Harris campaign. It absolutely is. It does not change the relationship. Sort of ironically, the governor and Vice President Harris have the longest and closest relationship, we are told, of any of the contenders on the list. They served as attorneys general together in their respective states. But look, every choice of a running mate is based on a variety of factors. It's based on comfort level, of course, but it's also based on what can help in this campaign. I'm told that extensive research is being done around Pennsylvania Governor Josh Shapiro, as well as Arizona Senator Mark Kelly, as well.
We'll pause here for a second. So Roy Cooper, is it Cooper? Everyone I know calls him Roy Cooper because it's spelled Roy Cooper. But anyway, Roy is out. There does seem to be an age issue there as well, apparently, with him being 67 years old. It's really interesting. I want to highlight this comment here from Janine. This is good to know. When I lived in NC, even though the state is red, Cooper won because he got us our raises. The government there is trash without him. Yeah, bruh. I mean, I went to high school in North Carolina and it was red, red, red back then. I was surprised when Obama won North Carolina.
Well, as potentially other people on that list, but those two are among the contenders who are getting the closest look tonight. Of course, Minnesota Governor Tim Walz has also been in the mix, and the Harris campaign has been very watching with interest at how he has been performing in what really has been sort of a rolling set of auditions. We saw that in Pennsylvania tonight as well. The governor there, Josh Shapiro, he said Vice President Harris is not only ready, she's damn ready. So he is.
Pause. So we're going to talk about these for just a second, and then I'm going to go over some receipts for some of them because I think there's some things you need to see. So we have top contenders, Governor Andy Beshear. He's from Kentucky. Then you have Secretary, oh, Jesus Christ, Pete Buttigieg. Sorry. I'm sorry. We'll get back to Pete. Senator Mark Kelly from Arizona. Governor Josh Shapiro is from Pennsylvania, and Governor Tim Walz is from Minnesota. So let's start with Governor Andy Beshear. I don't think she's going to pick him, although he is younger. This is something you got to remember again. The vice president, just keep in mind, there is a chance that they could be president. So we look at where we are now. So let's just keep that in mind. I don't think she's going to pick him because, yeah, he's from Kentucky. Kentucky's a red state. He's young. But I just don't see her leaning towards that way because obviously she cannot win the state of Kentucky. I see her choosing someone of a state that she may be, it might be a swing state or a state that she may need to win. So we're going to X out Andy Beshear because we know Kentucky is going to be red. Now let's move on to Pete, to Booty. Now, the thing about Booty, and we need to break this down for a second. They seem to get along pretty well from what I've been reading. They've had several events and engagements together, Kamala and Pete, but people, for whatever reason, seem to like them together. That being said, we got to talk about some things. We have to talk about what just happened not too long ago in East Palestine, Ohio, with that train derailment and how long it took for Pete to respond to the people there. I want to remind you that people in East Palestine, Ohio are still sick. People are still having symptoms today. So I'm not sure about her picking Booty. And the reason why I say that is because, remember, East Palestine, Ohio, you got to remember, it's like right on the border of Ohio and Pennsylvania. So there could be some influence there with the western part of the state of Pennsylvania, where they may be like, whoa, nah, bruh, we're not trying to rock with him, because even some of those chemicals made their way over into Western PA as well. That's one problem. Two, the other problem you're going to run into with Booty, like Kamala, his record on policing is not good. When Booty was mayor of, I forgot the name of the place. Jesus, I forgot it. Booty was the mayor. Why can't I remember? The town, Notre Dame. Damn it, it'll come back. Anyway, when Booty was thank you, Eric. South Bend, thank you. When Booty was mayor of South Bend, one of the issues that he had, particularly with Black voters, was the way that he handled the police. There were a number of complaints from Black residents in South Bend about racist police officers, about police brutality. There was a Black police officer at South Bend that complained about racism in the police department, and he was demoted. Now, why does that affect the job of the mayor? Because Booty, as the mayor, can actually fire the chief of police. So he could have fired that person that was allowing all of that to continue. He chose not to. There was a Black mother in South Bend, Indiana, that complained to Pete because her son was found hanging from a tree. This is all mad, wild stuff, fam. And I remember talking about this back when. This is why when he was running for president in 2020, I was like, ooh, Black people are not going to get in line for Pete, because it's going to start coming out what happened in South Bend, Indiana, and how he handled the police. And it did. It came out on the debate stage. So Booty may not be a good pick for Cam. Okay, let's move on to Senator Mark Kelly. I mean, she already got to defend her own prosecutorial record. Now you're going to try to have to defend Booty's record with police as well. Also, Booty didn't poll well with Black people. We got to remember that. Let's move on. Mark Kelly. This is the senator here from Arizona. So I could kind of see her maybe leaning towards Mark Kelly, in particular, because right now Donald Trump is beating Kamala Harris in Arizona. I still predict that Arizona will be red because that is a border state. And a lot of the border states, the voters have been complaining about the border issue. Whether you agree with it or not, that is just the reality. They don't seem to be too happy about what is happening there. So I could see Arizona returning back to red. And I've stated this months ago that I think this is going to happen. The problem that you run into with Senator Mark Kelly, if he decides to, be Kamala Harris's running mate, then that means that Senate seat is now going to be open. So now you have to get someone to run for Mark Kelly's Senate seat. and it could very possibly end up being a Republican that gets that seat. You never know. Arizona is kind of, up in the air these days. So that would be a tricky position to be with. With the governors, it's a little bit easier, but with the Senate seat, you would be giving up that seat, right? So there's that. So she may be leaning a little bit towards Mark Kelly because Arizona swing state. So that she's thinking maybe that could help her if she got him on her ticket. Maybe that could help her with Arizona. I don't think that it will, though. And then there's Governor Josh Shapiro. We're going to get into more details about him. But one thing I'm going to tell you, he is governor in Pennsylvania. He tends to have a pretty good approval rating in Pennsylvania. Where I think that would hurt her, though, is with young voters. And I'll get into the details about that in just a second. And then you have Governor Tim Walz from Minnesota. And one second. Sorry, my throat is like itchy. Governor Tim Walz from Minnesota. Another state that I would assume she's going to win anyway, but Minnesota is one of those states that they still say could be kind of up for grabs. So most people are probably going to say she should lean towards him, but I got a feeling she won't. And we'll get into that in just a second.
Has been outperforming, really showing what a running mate could be. But Aaron, this all comes as Republicans clearly have been knocked off balance a bit by J.D. Vance and some things in his history, what he has said before. That is one of the reasons that even though this surge has accelerated, I'm told that everything is being looked at very carefully, what all these candidates have potentially said, because as we know, anything that you said previously can certainly be used against you in the coming race.
Absolutely. All right, as you stand in Michigan now in the latest poll, I know tied, and obviously Biden had been down significantly there prior to that. Thanks to Jeff Zeleny. Okay, panel here. Max Rose, let me start with you. I'm just going to take a pause here and say we've really gone a new world where now 67 is too old. I mean, I think we can just back off that a little bit here, but okay. But Roy Cupper now is out. He doesn't want to be considered. So, and you hear, we know significant vetting around Kelly from Arizona and Josh Shapiro from Pennsylvania, among possibly others. That could be Tim Walz, Pritzker, we don't know. So who do you think that she should choose?
Look, I think she needs to think about the electoral map, and Governor Shapiro stands out in that regard. Here's the interesting thing about the vice presidential decision. It is.
Yeah, we'll stop there because I'm going to break some things down about some of these candidates or these options that she has here. We're going to start with Governor Shapiro. This one would be a problem for Kamala, for young voters, especially those that participated in the pro-Palestine marches and cause, because Josh Shapiro does not land well on that issue. And I think this would be a huge red flag. Look at this. This one is coming from Dr. T. I am praying Kamala Harris will just say no to Josh Shapiro. Shapiro's stances on free speech, academic freedom, and blatant disregard for Palestinian Pennsylvanians and refusal to call for a ceasefire is unacceptable, ladies and gentlemen. Opposition to ceasefire. Shapiro has also been criticized for refusing to call for a ceasefire in Gaza, despite children being among the biggest victims of the assault. Look at this part highlighted here. At a time when governors of California and New Jersey have underlined in public statements their support for a ceasefire in Gaza, Governor Shapiro failed to do that. His attacks on academic freedom, intentionally depicting protests in a negative light, failure to care for and listen to the Palestinian Pennsylvanians whose families are being massacred day in and out by the Israeli government, and his behind the scenes antagonization of community organizations cannot be ignored and easily forgiven. So, fam, Josh Shapiro would be a problem for younger voters that are pro-Palestine, because not only was he against the protests, and we'll get into this a little bit more in this article from Common Dreams, but he also wanted to punish universities that wanted to divest from Israel. So that right there lets you know exactly where Josh Shapiro stands. I think that would be harmful towards Kamala Harris's presidency, but it's not like she really gives a damn. Common Dreams really like lays this all out. Like, I don't know who chose these people for her. I don't know if her campaign team thought, oh, these are the people you should look at. But I think she needs to revisit her list because apparently she's going to make her announcement in 7 days. So listen to this. Common Dreams is all like, they really laid this out. Why Josh Shapiro is not the right choice for Harris VP. We're going to jump to, I don't know what that is. This part right here. A Harris Shapiro ticket would jeopardize all of that. They're talking about here Arab Americans and Muslims, many of whom devoted weeks or months of their lives in 2020 to defeating Trump on behalf of the Biden-Harris ticket. And we're going to jump down here. If Harris now chooses a running mate who intensely connects her to Biden's policies on the Gaza war that are so unpopular with much of the Democratic base, party unity and the chances of defeating Trump would be undermined. Overall, Josh Shapiro is a liberal and sometimes progressive on domestic issues, though notably not on fracking or tax subsidies or private schools. Everybody hear that? So when you hear them tout about big climate change and all climate reform and all that kind of stuff, just remember this about Josh Shapiro. But on the contentious issue of Israel's relentless war against Palestinian civilians in Gaza, Shapiro sounds much less bothered by the lethal violence than by U.S. ceasefire activists, many of whom he has demonized. A little bit of the history here. Let's dive down here. In 2021, after Ben & Jerry's refused to sell its products to Israel's illegal settlements, then Attorney General Josh Shapiro threatened the company by urging Pennsylvania state agencies to enforce a constitutionally suspect law targeting advocates of boycott, divestment, and sanctions, BDS, against Israel over its discriminatory policies. Now, this is very dangerous. If she were to pick Josh Shapiro, we could possibly look at an administration that is going to implement laws against protesters that are against Israel, against BDS protests, BDS movements, etc. This is very dangerous. We're looking at a censorship guy. He wants to censor people. He wants to punish schools that want to divest from Israel. I don't know about you, but I'm not trying to have more censorship. So not a good idea. It goes on to say here, oh, pardon me 1 second. Okay. Sorry, I had to wipe my nose. Oh, here we go. He said BDS is rooted in anti-Semitism. And he knows this is a damn lie. This is, again, Josh Shapiro. Okay. This is who she looking at. Everybody pay attention to that. He goes on to say, after October 7th, Pennsylvania-based Muslim groups wrote a letter protesting Governor Shapiro's one-sided comments. Not only did you fail to recognize the structural root causes of the conflict, you chose to intentionally ignore the civilian loss of life in Gaza. We all must speak with moral clarity and support Israel's right to defend itself. That was his response. So it is very apparent as well that Shapiro is not willing to, I guess, hear what the Palestinian civilians in citizens in Pennsylvania have to say. He doesn't want to hear where they're coming from. So this is, again, this is going to be a problem. Right now, Jill Stein is beating Kamala Harris with the Muslim vote. I'll show you that in a second. Right now, Jill Stein is beating Kamala Harris with the Muslim vote. So keep that in mind. It goes on to say here, beginning in late April, Governor Shapiro and his office repeatedly prodded campuses to restore order and take action against student encampments, including the University of Pennsylvania. He goes on to say here, Shapiro invoked student safety in demanding the encampment be shut down. Police shut it down the next day. arresting 33 people in 2 different interviews. Shapiro seemed to compare campus ceasefire activists, many of whom are Jewish or students of color, to white supremacists camped out and yelling racial slurs. So Josh Shapiro was calling students of color and other Jewish students that were protesting against Israel, he was calling them white supremacists. I don't know who in the hell told Kamala Harris that it was a good idea to look at this guy, but it is not a good idea to look at this guy. Because bet, fam, come November, all this going to come back up. If she announces him as the VP, all of this is going to come back up. It goes on to say, he also compared them to people dressed in KKK outfits. This is insane. There's one more here. July 23rd, Nina Turner wrote, choosing Governor Shapiro for vice president would be a mistake. Governor Shapiro compared pro-peace protesters to the KKK. That is simply unacceptable and would stifle the momentum VP Harris has. Hopefully, she is looking to build a broad coalition to beat Trump. A broad coalition to beat Trump and a fascistic MAGA movement is exactly what is needed. Making Shapiro the nominee for vice president is exactly what we don't need. So again, a little bit there about Josh Shapiro and why that would be a bad move for Kamala Harris to choose for a VP pick. I think that would hurt her with younger voters. Right now, she's doing pretty well with young voters, but I think that would definitely hurt her. Particularly when these things come out. There's a little bit more here that I want to show you about his approval. New poll highlights Josh Shapiro approval rating during the VP search. So it says, Emerson College polling / The Hill survey found 49% of Pennsylvanians surveyed approve of Shapiro, while only 31% disapprove. 22% of Pennsylvania Republicans and 46% of independents approve of Shapiro's performance. So his approval rating is at 49%. Some people are like, oh yeah, that's a good percentage point to be at. It's almost half. I don't know. I think that one could be a mistake if she chose him. That's Shapiro. Now let's fast forward to Minnesota Governor Tim Walz. Tim Walz, I covered him last year when there was this viral video on Twitter of him signing into law the free school lunch for Minnesota students. That was Tim Walz. I want to take you back to him approving the free school lunch, which I think every kid should have free lunch and free breakfast in this country, et cetera, at these schools. I really do feel like no child should go hungry in this country. By the way, this move here in Minnesota did spark, a little bit of a trend here, I guess, because after this was passed in Minnesota, we passed it here in Massachusetts. So just keep that in mind. This is Governor Tim Walz, another one that she is considering.
And you said basically there's no such thing as a generic Republican. These guys are weird. Once they start running, their weirdness shows up. What did you mean? Weird
I'll
how?
stand by that. Well, look, just the strange things they become obsessed with, demonizing our children, becoming obsessed with people's personal lives in their bedrooms, restricting freedoms. I'm surrounded by states who are spending their time figuring out how to ban Charlotte's Web in their schools while we're banishing hunger from ours with free breakfast and lunch. That's what the public's looking for. That's what they're trying to get to. And they will weirdly obsess with everything to be mean and cruel and small in their ideas. And I didn't hear anything last night that did anything different to that. So I'll stand by that. I just think Americans know this is just weird stuff to be focused on. And many of the times it's just projection. We hear these stories every time. They want to project morality to us. And I say, as your elected leaders, you don't need to hear a sermon from us, but you expect us to try and live one. And I think whether it's making sure the middle class has what they need, protecting reproductive rights, truly addressing climate change, governors are doing that across the country. They're popular with that. And I think we understand we'll be able to do that because of Joe Biden's policies, whether it's the Infrastructure Act, CHIPS Act, bringing manufacturing back to America. Those are things people want to hear about, not demonizing some child because of who they are. At the end of the day, Americans are better than that.
Governor Tim.
Okay, so that is Governor Tim Walz there. So again, he kind of went viral last year particularly on Twitter, when he decided to sign that into law, free lunch for Minnesota kids, right? So they would not go hungry at school. Again, I think everybody can do that. And don't be mistaken by this, because again, this just goes to show you what can be accomplished at the local level, which is why I continue to say a lot of people tune in around election time for the presidential election because they believe that this one person is going to come in and save them. A lot of these things you can get done in your own state. There's a lot of things that we passed here in Massachusetts via ballot measures, right, that have not been passed on the national level. And when we talk about progressive policies have been passed in the states, just not on the national level yet. So that is Governor Tim Walz. Now, one thing I will say when it comes to policing, this is something I do want to mention. He did get criticism for this. Minnesota governor announces changes to policing practices. So you guys do have to remember it's Minnesota. And yes, this is around the George Floyd murder as well. So this is another thing that he did have to deal with. So it was this part here. Walz's executive action includes $15 million for violence prevention programs and changes to the state's policy on viewing of body cam footage. The move comes days after former Minneapolis police officer Derek Chauvin was sentenced to 22 and a half years in prison for the death of George Floyd. This is what he went on to say. Right now, we have an opportunity to create safer communities for all Minnesotans by building a public safety system focused on transparency, accountability, and violence prevention. These policy changes and increased investments in safety, together with the Minnesota Police Accountability Act, signed into law last summer, and the bipartisan public safety plan this legislative session, gets us closer to a system of public safety that truly protects all Minnesotans. The $15 million in grants directed from funding received via the American Rescue Plan federal stimulus package will go toward community safety and violence intervention programs, as well as survivor support grants. The initiative also includes policy changes to increase transparency and accountability through the Minnesota Board of Peace Officer Standards and Training. So he did get some pushback from people about this. One of the things that he said is Black and brown people have not felt safe in Minnesota. This moment requires us to do something different to achieve justice for our community. We are asking our leaders to meet us in this challenge and intervene where they can enact stronger policies. We are not one Minnesota until all of us feel safe, protected, and particularly by those sworn to do so. But yeah, he received some pushback there for that. So, you know, some people have said that they don't feel he has been great on policing. That's another thing he may have to answer for. Now, what do I think she is going to do? I don't think that Kamala Harris is going to pick Tim Walz, even though he may be a little bit more aligned with like the free school lunch, that kind of thing. Like people are saying that's who she should pick. But strategically, I don't think that's who she's going to pick. I really do think she's going to pick Josh Shapiro or Mike Kelly. Mike Kelly, he was a former astronaut, from what I understand. Astronaut? Wasn't he an astronaut? Yeah, I think he was an astronaut, from what I understand. Governor Walz was also former military. I forgot to mention that. But I think she's going to try to go more so with Mark Kelly. He might be more of a safer bet. He doesn't have so much baggage around him for the comments made around Gaza like Josh Shapiro does, or the censorship complex. So I think she may lean a little bit more towards Mark Kelly, but I also don't see her not selecting possibly Josh Shapiro, right? And then we got to ask this question too. Did Kamala hand select these people, or were they chosen for her, right? You got to think about that. But I'll show you what the polls are showing right now. And I think everybody needs to see this. Things have changed. 2024 general election, Trump versus Kamala Harris. Just FYI, July 30th, 2020, Biden was plus 8.3. And in 2016, Hillary Clinton was plus 0.4. So just to give you an idea. But right now, if you're looking at the polls, it's getting close. Like, she is catching up to Donald Trump. The RCP average right now has Trump at 48.1 and has Harris at 46.1. And we can see other polls here as well, right? The Harvard Harris poll has her at 48, him at 52. Reuters, Trump 42, her 43. That's, I think, the closest, one of the closest ones. We can almost, I guess, say that's basically a tie. Morning Consult 46, 47. Wall Street Journal 49, 47. Forbes 51, 49. New York Times, Siena 48, 47. Anyway, you guys get the point. She is catching up to him. And you can see the spread here as well, right? So, but Trump is still leading for the most part right now. That being said, you know, it's going to be close. It's getting close. And I want to just take you to the map here where you can see where Biden withdraws right there, right? So at that point, it was 47.8 Trump, 44.8 Biden. But then once Harris is announced, it was 45.9% for Kamala Harris, 47.5% for Donald Trump. Then we go up. I just want to show you how she's been climbing, right? There was the assassination, yada, yada. He got a little bit of boost after that. And now we are right here. So it is going to be close right now. Now, that being said, anything can happen between now and November. Kamala could be experiencing what we call the initial announcement boost, where you get a big boost after you just announced. RFK Jr. had this as well, and we've seen his polling numbers decrease, especially since Kamala Harris has announced. RFK Jr.'s polling numbers are decreasing. I don't know if people have noticed, but it's happening. So she could be just experiencing that. We don't know. We'll have to wait a couple of weeks to see. That could change. Also, without any debates, I don't know, because there was supposed to be a debate in September. Donald Trump declined to have that debate, apparently, because he believed that the DNC was going to choose someone else at the convention. The convention is in August. I don't think they're going to swap her out. Because how she's polling. So we have to wait and see when there is going to be a debate, because right now we don't even know. Interesting. Hope I broke that down for you well. All right, let's go to some of the comments here. Thank you. Oh, I said Janine, sorry. Thank you, Roger. Shapiro and Walz on different side of Israel issue. Thank you, Love USA. They keep saying not going back to what? Trump secure border, low illegal immigration, tough on crime, low inflation, low gas prices, low interest rates, and world peace. Well, there was no world peace. There was the coups in Venezuela as well. But what they say that they're talking about women's reproduction. That's what they mean when they say not going back. They're also referring to Project 2025. So there's that. Adam, what's up? She has access in a lot of states. Technically, Claudia does have a path to win. Yeah, I heard about this recently. Claudia de la Cruz. I think that Claudia de la Cruz should do more interviews. I interviewed her on this channel. I know Bree interviewed her on Bad Faith. But I haven't seen her do many interviews. Meanwhile, the other third-party independent candidates, I see them all over the place, like doing multiple. So I think she needs to get her name out more by doing more interviews. Thank you, Goba. What if Kamala chose Jill Stein as her running mate and said, haha, 20 years of acting like a tool of the oligarchy, and now we will take it down? Yeah, that would never happen. Yeah, she would never pick Kamala as a running mate. What happened to the tight VNC? I didn't get to do the ballot. What happened? Where's the ballot initiatives? Oh, sorry. Thanks. Okay. But that's a funny one. Okay. No, not tonight, Eric. I have training at 6. Sorry, I'm talking to Eric behind the scenes. Yeah, he was asking about, we're going to have to do call in on Thursday night because I have training. I have weight training tomorrow morning at 6. And you guys know we're on call in for, like, we call the after show. We're on there for quite a while. But yeah, I have training at 6 a.m. tomorrow. That was the only time available. So I do have to do that. Anywho, we'll have to wait and see what happens. But we are now at the end of the ballot measure results for 2023 with the state of Wisconsin. When I come back on Wednesday, we are starting the ballot measures for 2024. These questions will be on your ballot in November for those of you that live in a ballot initiative state. So I'm getting excited because Roger hasn't given me a sneak peek yet. So I don't even know, other than my own state, Massachusetts, I don't know what to expect. So I'm kind of excited. It's all good. Weight training or weight training. Yeah, I have weight training tomorrow. Let's see. Okay. I'm sorry, Tim. Let me put this Ben and Jerry's down. Damn, Sabby. Yeah, I do have weight training tomorrow. Yeah. Sorry. Wisconsin. Final one for 2023. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, Wisconsin. Wisconsin voters do not have the right to place their own initiatives on the ballot, to pass and repeal state laws, and amend the Wisconsin Constitution on their own. These voters only have the power to ratify it into the Wisconsin Constitution, what the legislator puts before them through what is called a legislative referred constitutional amendment, aka the state legislator initiative. The following initiatives took place in a special election this year of 2023 on April 4th. Question 1, conditions of release before conviction amendment. A yes vote supported amending the state constitution to allow the state legislator to define what serious harm means in relation to the bail conditions that judges imposed on accused persons released before their criminal trial. This is for the purpose of protecting members of the community from serious harm. This was ratified by 66.55%. Interesting. Who supported this? All of the Republicans. So state senators, state representatives that were Republicans, and also the Waukesha County Assistant DA, Michael Thurston. There are also some candidates that supported this measure. One of the unions that supported it is the Wisconsin Chiefs of Police Association. Organizations, Americans for Prosperity, and Wisconsin State Lodge Fraternal Order of Police. Here's one of the arguments from State Senator Van Wangard. First, it allows a judge to consider serious harm to others instead of serious bodily harm when setting conditions of release. This is an important change because serious bodily harm is a statutorily defined term, essentially meaning harm that could cause death or serious permanent disfigurement. Interesting. Who opposed this? State Representative Sue Conley is a Democrat. Some of the organizations that were against it is the ACLU of Wisconsin and the Wisconsin NAACP. It goes on to say here, an argument from, we're going to do the one from the League of Women Voters. The League of Women Voters of Wisconsin said, increased pretrial detention and denial of bail will violate rights of those who are innocent until proven guilty, increase costs for local jails, including rural areas, increase racial disparity in the justice system, and adversely impact people with low income. Very interesting. There was no money spent to support or oppose this measure. Here's commentary here from Roger Meadows. As I've outlined and read, sometimes if you're confused about a measure, what you got to do is take a look at who supports it and who opposes it. Now, what does this not do? And what should be more focused on is the fact that this is a reform, but it's not a solution. The whole issue is law enforcement and rule of law advocates don't want dangerous people walking around the community before a trial date. I think you mean trial date there. while those who advocate for innocence until proven guilty say they've not been duly convicted. Putting the accused in jail for prolonged periods of time without a trial, simply but not having the dough, is more of an economic injustice. Yeah, no one is coming up with ideas to enforce the Sixth Amendment, which talks about the right of speedy trial with no delay. Where's the amendment to fully finance the public defender's office, as well as to get more judges, hiring more staff to provide them with the resources necessary to move these cases along? Doing that ends this fight. Yeah, this is another thing I really want to mention just for a second about this speedy trial. You have a right to a speedy trial, but I've never heard of anyone having a speedy trial. I mean, you could be tried. You could be, let's say you're arrested for whatever reason, but the trial date may not happen until 3 years later. So I never understood that. Why does it take so long to have these trials? And then another thing is, oftentimes, a lot of those cases don't even make it to trial because the accused will end up taking the plea deal. So now you take the plea deal and now you got a smidge on your record, but you don't have to sit up there and wait for a trial. It's just a mess. The criminal justice reform is a problem. Criminal justice system, sorry, not criminal justice reform, but there's issues there that need to be corrected. Question 2, conditions for cash bail amendment. A yes vote supported amending the state constitution to authorize judges to consider the totality of the circumstances when imposing and setting cash bail for persons accused of violent crimes. This includes circumstances related to a previous conviction of a violent crime, the probability the accused will not appear in court, the need to protect the community from serious harm as defined by the state legislator, the need to prevent witness intimidation, and the potential affirmative defenses of the accused. This measure here was ratified by 67.57%. Again, that was April 2023. Now, question 1 and question 2 are related. The Wisconsin legislator voted to refer 2 ballot measures to the April ballot that amend Section 8.2 of Article 1 of the state constitution. Question 1 removed the word bodily from serious bodily harm in the section that governs the conditions a judge imposes on an accused person released before conviction. The amendment also allowed the state legislator to define serious harm. Question 2 amended the same section of the state constitution to allow judges to consider a previous conviction of a violent crime, the probability the accused will not appear in court, the need to protect the community from serious harm as defined by the state legislator, the need to prevent witness intimidation, and the potential affirmative defenses of the accused when setting cash bail. So I hope everybody is seeing what is happening here. So, who supported this? Republicans, state senators and representatives, and of course, DA Michael Thurston. There are a couple of candidates that supported this as well. One candidate, actually 2 of these candidates were nonpartisan that supported that. That's interesting. Unions, Wisconsin Chief of Police Organizations, Americans for Prosperity, and the Wisconsin State Lodge Fraternal Order of Police. Here's one of the arguments here from Scott Allen. There are too many crimes occurring by too many individuals awaiting trial with a lengthy criminal record. We need to take away this shield from these soft on crime judges that are harming our communities. Who opposed this? State Representative Sue Conley, who's Democrat. One of the organizations, again, repeat organizations, ACLU, Wisconsin, NAACP, to name a few. And one of the arguments here, again, I want to go with what the League of Women Voters says. Increased pretrial detention and denial of bail will, again, violate rights of those who are innocent until proven guilty, increase the cost for local jails, including rural areas, increase racial disparity in the justice system, and adversely impact people with low crime. When we get to campaign finance, there was no money spent to support or oppose it. One note here from Roger Meadows, same as before, present an amendment to enforce the Sixth Amendment, the right to a speedy trial with no delay. That is something that we should be pushing for. We should be pushing for the speedy trial. And question 3, work requirement for welfare benefits advisory question. A yes vote supported advising the state legislature to require able-bodied childless adults to look for work in order to receive taxpayer-funded welfare benefits. This was ratified, actually passed, by 79.57%. That's a big one. So what does this do? The question is not legally binding and did not enact a work requirement law for welfare benefits. At the time of the election, the state law required able-bodied individuals without dependents to look for work in order to receive unemployment insurance. There was also a work requirement for Wisconsin food stamp program, Wisconsin Food Share, but the requirement had been waived since October 2020 due to the pandemic. Who supported this? Republicans, senators and representative, Organization Foundation for Government Accountability. Now, here's one of the arguments. This is from Sam Adolphson. The workforce crisis in the Badger State has been driven largely by rapidly expanding welfare programs like food stamps, Badger Care, and other cash benefits that for 3 years have been disconnected from work. Wisconsin has nearly 250,000 open jobs. Employers are desperate for workers, and voters will soon weigh in on whether they prefer able-bodied adults to be working for a paycheck or receiving a welfare check. Interesting. I think, again, this brings back the question of poverty. Like, again, why do we have poverty in this country? There's no reason for us to have poverty in the United States of America at all. But we can give money to Israel, though. Who opposed it? State Senate Melissa Agard. Organizations Wisconsin Democracy Campaign. Here's one of the arguments here. Their resolution simply put attacks low-income people in the state of Wisconsin, and it's born out of consideration to their base for the spring election. They're trying to gin up their voters, simply put. There was over $480,000 spent of campaign finance contributions to support this measure and $0 spent to oppose it. Interesting, folks. Ladies and gentlemen, that is it for 2023 ballot measure initiatives. We are done with that. Thursday, we begin 2024. So get ready for it. I'm doing something a little bit different this time. I'm still going to present the full, measures to you on this show, but then I'm also going to do a short, I guess you could say like a YouTube short video or TikTok style video, and I'm not putting it on TikTok. I suck at TikTok, but a YouTube short style video where I just go through a list of what is going to be offered for that state. And then boom, just toss it out there like that. Pow! Just like, just a shorter version of it. So if you want something, you can just click on and say, okay, what are those measures for California again? You'll have that short video just to click on. Yep. So we're going to do both. That is it for me, fam. I just want to make sure I get the other comments here as well. I think I got everybody. Did I get everybody? Okay, I did get everybody. Okay, good. All right, guys, that is it for me, guys. I am done for tonight. We'll do call in Thursday night, which is great because also I am starting the new ballot measures on Thursday, but I do have early rise tomorrow morning. So other than that, I'm out of here, guys. Don't forget to hit the like if you didn't get a chance to do so. Have a good night. Keep up the fight.